Chapter 1 The Dump Truck Comes to Life. Tang Yun, let me ask you again, what exactly is your relationship with those men?
A beautiful woman sat across from him, carelessly trimming her freshly done nails.
Friends, what kind of relationship could it be? If you're poor, just make more money. Don't think of everything as dirty, okay? Chen Yun was about to laugh out loud. I'm poor. Fine, you've been eating and drinking off me, and I even paid the down payment on your family's house. I'm carrying 2 mortgages, working 12 hours a day, and holding down 3 part-time jobs, and now you're saying I'm poor? So what? Isn't that what a man should do? Do you want me to go out and earn money? Then what's the point of having you around?
Tang Yun's words were light and flippant, belittling the sacrifices Chen Yun had made over the years. Chen Yun could no longer hold back his anger, slammed his hand on the table and shouted, "Let's put aside the money issue, I admit it, but tell me, why did you stay out all night with those men? What did you guys do?" At this point, the other people in the restaurant were also attracted by the two people's noise and looked over, pointing at them.
Tang Yun's face flashed with a trace of annoyance and embarrassment.
Her spoiled nature from childhood made her feel that she had already lost face to the extreme.
Think whatever you want.
I'm still meeting friends for a card game. Hurry up and go make money to pay off the loan. After saying this, she put on her sunglasses, shook her hair and walked out of the restaurant. Chen Yun chased after her with bloodshot eyes. You come back here. You're not going anywhere until we've had this out.
Let go of me. I've made myself perfectly clear. Are you still not ashamed enough? Tang Yun pushed him away forcefully.
Chen Yun lost his balance and fell towards the street. At that moment, a truck came from the opposite direction and roared towards them.
Squeak! A harsh brake squeal sounded on the street. Oh, it's a hit and run.
Oh my god, he flew more than 10 meters away. I don't think this person is going to make it.
Did the dump truck start driving today?
Chen Yun fell in a pool of blood and looked in the direction of Tang Yun as he was dying. The woman's face was pale as she retreated backwards, then disappeared into the crowd without looking back.
Ha! Women, in the end, I was wrong to trust you.
I hope I don't run into you in my next life, or I will definitely make you wish you were dead. Chen Yun stood by the window, lit a cigarette, and rubbed his slightly swollen temple. Yes, the dump truck had given him a new life. Although 5 days had passed, he still couldn't believe it was real. At that moment, a soft female voice sounded behind him.
Lao, husband, dinner is ready.
Chen Yun turned his head and looked at the woman in front of him, taking a deep drag of his cigarette. The woman was in her 30s, and her face was one that could be said to be the epitome of feminine gentleness and beauty. At this moment, she was wearing a black outfit, and her exquisite figure was simply breathtaking. She had 2 cute, fluffy white bunny ears in her thick black hair, and the left ear was flopped down. Behind her was a white rabbit tail.
A rabbit tail? How, did it get attached?
Chen Yun tried hard to look away from this woman. You?
Yes.
I'm sorry, my lord, my master, I was wrong to call you husband without permission. Before he could finish speaking, the woman's eyes dropped. She didn't dare to make eye contact with Chen Yun, and her voice trembled with fear.
Chen Yun's headache got even worse.
Just saying that this rebirth thing is not real, who would believe it if it happened to them? A stunningly beautiful imperial lady in uniform still talking like this, how could there be such a good thing?
I'm asking you, do you believe it?
After a few days of information integration, Chen Yun learned that this woman was called Qingshui and was his wife. The place where he was reborn was basically the same as the original one, which could be understood as a parallel world. In this world, he and Qingshui had been married for more than 10 years. Unlike the previous life, he was no longer a man who took on all the responsibilities and worked hard, but had become a complete scumbag.
As long as it was not related to normal life, he had basically done it all. He had a large group of friends outside, and they spent every day eating, drinking, and having fun.
But what Chen Yun couldn't figure out was why he had been reborn here.
Could it be that this woman was really as intertwined with his past life as in those fantasy stories?
He was also very sure of one thing, he didn't seem to have been reincarnated like in those novels, but had been reborn with his body. This could be easily proven. Before he was reborn, he was in his 20s, but in this world he was in his 30s. However, his current physical fitness was obviously the same as before. As for why Chen Yun was so sure,
it's simple.
He doesn't need to soak wolfberries in a thermos, and he still has some physical instinctive responses when he wakes up in the morning. In addition to these, the remaining 8-pack abs and skin condition also show that he is a young man in his 20s.
In addition, he has a bold guess. The Chen Yun in this world is the same person as the original self. Most of his memories completely overlap with the life trajectory of Chen Yun here, and at the moment of rebirth, he felt like he had returned in a trance. Although it was hard to understand, that feeling was amazing. He had thought about this for a long time, but still couldn't figure it out. In the end, he just let it go, and figured it out later. Chen Yun's gaze returned to Qingxue again, and for a moment, he was at a loss for words. Forget it, just accept reality. After being reborn, I was able to meet such a domineering wife. This wave is not a loss. Do you want to change your clothes first? Looking at Qingxue's current attire, it is indeed very pleasing to the eye, but how can I eat like this? It always feels like blood is rushing backwards. Qingxue hesitated after hearing this, and her body trembled as she said timidly, "Husband, you want to play a role again?" Never mind, let's eat. Shen Yun gave up resisting. His image as a scumbag had already taken root in Qingxue's heart, and it was impossible to change it for a while. At this time, there was a knock on the door outside. "Chen Yun, are you home?" It's Tang Yun. Chapter 2, Qingxue's Leverage. Qingxue. Chen Yun's first reaction to hearing this name was to look at the kitchen knife. He suppressed the urge to rush out and chop up the woman. No. Definitely not now. He had to hold back. He had only just been delivered by dump truck, and if something happened to him, there was no guarantee that he would be delivered to such an ideal environment again by a dump truck of such good quality. If she is sent to some refugee camp, it will be a problem for her to survive. At this moment, Qingxue's reaction is even more intriguing. Her body kept backing up, and her clear eyes were already filled with fear. So, why did that woman come? She won't know about me and come to tell her husband, will she? What should I do? Maybe I should hide first. Yes, that's what I'll do. But where should I hide? She was so anxious that she scurried around the room, her small, pale hands nervously placed on her chest. Paired with this outfit, she looked like a frightened bunny, her tail flapping. Chen Yun's attention was drawn to her, and his voice was already a little hoarse with anger. What are you doing? Hearing his question, Qingxue stopped as if she had been caught with her tail between her legs. Her big eyes were full of panic and helplessness, and even her eyes were a little red, looking cute. When Chen Yun saw her like this, his anger immediately subsided. Sure enough, he was still acting on impulse. It was a pity that such a good woman was actually thinking of going down with that trashy woman. He took a few deep breaths and tried to make his voice gentle. Go change your clothes and don't forget to take off the rabbit ears. Oh, Qingxue obediently agreed and trotted into the bedroom. Chen Yun did not forget to add, wear normal clothes. He was really afraid that this woman would have a brain fart and wear something fancy, and that would be a lot of fun. After Qingxue came out of the bedroom and changed, Shen Yun made sure that everything was fine before going to the door. The moment the door opened, before anyone could come in, a strong, pungent perfume hit him in the face, almost killing him. Hey, Shen Yun, what took you so long to open the door? Are you training that yellow-faced woman again? Looking at Tang Yun in front of him, the anger in his heart spread again. He clenched his hands hard to calm himself down. She basically looked the same as Tang Yun in his original world, except that she looked a bit older. She was wearing a red dress, her hair in big waves, and her face was heavily made up, looking extremely charming. But she was really not in the same league as Qingxue. How should I put it? Qingxue is the kind of woman who looks perfect without any makeup. Tang Yun, on the other hand, looks like someone who sells herself. Why are you here? Hearing Chen Yun's cold voice, Tang Yun froze for a moment, then looked at him in surprise. Something seemed to be wrong with this man's mood today. Every time he saw her, he couldn't wait to cling to her, but today he had this expression on his face. But she didn't care. After all, she had come here today to deal with Qingxue, that shrew. Why, didn't you miss me? The voice was gentle and charming, especially when it was strained, it made people feel numb all over. If she hadn't gotten her killed once, Chen Yun might have really been tempted. But now, all I can think about is how to get revenge. Tang Yun in this world has a different story, but she still hasn't escaped the two words fishing for women. After graduating from university, Chen Yun took some money from home and started a business with Qingxue, earning his first pot of gold. Later, the company gradually grew in size, and he slowly became richer. He took the same path that every man wants to take, and fooled around with other women. This woman was Tang Yun.
When the company was booming, she applied for the position of secretary. Chen Yun, under her sweet talk, did not withstand the barrage of sugar-coated bullets. Most of the money earned by the company went into her pocket. At that time, Tang Yun fully displayed the meaning of the word woman of easy virtue. 6 months later, Chen Yun's attitude towards Qing Shui also completely changed. The company was no longer managed, and he spent the whole day going around Tang Yun. Later, after Tang Yun had emptied the company's accounts, she persuaded Chen Yun to sell the company in every way possible. Chen Yun really did listen, and after selling the company, he spent the whole day thinking about hanging out with her. Tang Yun took out a document bag from her bag and waved it in front of his eyes. "Why are you in a daze? Take a look at this, you should be very interested." When Qing Shui saw the 2 words hospital written on the bag, there was no trace of blood left on her pretty face. She shouted with a trembling voice, What are you going to do?" This tone was probably the loudest Qing Shui could make, but to outsiders, it didn't even compare to the sound of a kitten meowing. Tang Yun snorted, walked up to her and said, "What? You still have the nerve to ask that? You tricked Chen Yun for so long and you don't feel guilty?" I don't." Qing Shui lowered her head, her nervous fingers clenched together, her lips pursed tightly as she tried not to cry. She looked so cute that you just wanted to hug her. Chen Yun looked at the file bag and dozens of possible outcomes already flashed through his mind. Did I get the wrong script for the dump truck? How come I still run into these kinds of problems after being reborn? Could it be that Qing Shui doesn't look as simple as she seems? Could it be that this is not a report on an abortion? Otherwise, I might as well just get rid of them all. A refugee camp or something isn't unacceptable. Tang Yun pointed at Qing Shui's forehead and scolded, "This is the first time I've seen a woman like you. How dare you argue after doing such a shameless thing? If I were you, I would have jumped off this building a long time ago, so as not to trouble Chen Yun. You old hag, don't look at yourself in the mirror and see what you look like. Get a divorce quickly. Chen Yun and I are the true love, understand?" Qing Shui kept backing away as she was scolded, and finally leaned against the wall, looking helplessly at Chen Yun with a bloodshot lip from her biting. Chapter 3, Qing Shui is a psychopath? Chen Yun paid no attention to Tang Yun's insults or Qing Shui's pleas for help. His gaze remained fixed on the file bag. Anyway, let's see what's inside before deciding what to do. He took a few deep breaths and opened the bag. What came into view was an examination report, and the name on it was indeed Qing Shui's. There was dense text in the middle, recording the examination process and items, and Chen Yun skipped straight to the results. 10 seconds later. Chen Yun. Emotional disorder, mild depression, psychological illness. He had circled a few key words. It seemed to be a bit different from what he had expected. Let the dump truck rest for a while, I feel like I can still be here for a while. At this time, Tang Yun had one hand on her hip and the other hand poking Qing Shui's forehead nonstop, cursing in her mouth. She had completely revealed the temperament of a middle-aged woman. Qing Shui didn't dare to argue back either, so she looked at Chen Yun with such a pitiable expression that her originally white fingers had been pinched until there was no trace of blood left. Stop. Chen Yun looked at Qing Shui, who had been bullied like this, and already regretted it. He shouldn't have been so paranoid. After a few days of contact, he had already roughly understood Qing Shui's character. It was this woman, Tang Yun, who had disturbed his mind. Qing Shui saw that he had finally spoken, and like a person who had received a great pardon, she ran out of the corner and hid behind Chen Yun. In her heart, no matter how excessive her husband's actions were, she subconsciously still saw him as a safe haven. Tang Yun came over unrelentingly and scolded, "You shameless woman, you still have the nerve to hide behind him, hurry up and get out of here, you." Chen Yun interrupted her with a stern expression, holding up the medical report in his hand and saying, "That's enough. Where did you get this?" Upon hearing his question, Tang Yun immediately switched to a gentle and charming persona, as if she hadn't just yelled at him. "Oh dear, honey, I have a friend who works in the hospital, and he happened to see this medical report and gave it to me. Luckily, I found it early, otherwise you would have been cheated by this psychopath." Qing Shui poked her little head out and said with courage, I'm not mentally ill." Then she immediately hid behind Chen Yun. "How dare you argue, I'll rip your mouth off today," she said, and she was about to rush over again. Enough, Chen Yun looked at Tang Yun with cold eyes. "Lie to me? Ha ha. This is really ridiculous, this woman is really eloquent. If I let this go, it would be a waste of my rebirth." An unformed idea lingered in Chen Yun's heart. "Don't you like money?
Okay, then I'll let you take enough.
Chen Yun's mouth revealed a sneer. You go back first, I'll handle this matter, and we'll get in touch later.
Tang Yun looked at Qing Shui with a smug expression. Ha! You old hag, just wait for the divorce. After saying that, she walked towards the door, and when she passed Chen Yun, she didn't forget to throw a flirtatious glance at him, and she ran her finger across his hand. Bang! The door slammed shut. Chen Yun looked down at his right hand, frowned slightly, put down the inspection report in his hand, and walked towards the bathroom. Qing Shui nervously tugged at the corner of his shirt behind him, her small face still marked with tears, looking pitifully at him. You, where are you going? Don't go, I'm scared. Chen Yun said softly, your hands are dirty, go wash them, I'll be right back. After washing his hands several times in the bathroom, his heart felt a little better. There was no way around it. He was now extremely resistant to that woman's heart. If it weren't for the plan, he would have yelled at her. He really didn't want to let her go like that. When Chen Yun walked out of the bathroom, Qing Shui was still standing obediently in the same place, not even changing her posture. She just kept stealing glances at him from time to time. After their eyes met, she nervously lowered her head, as if she had made a big mistake. What the hell is going on? Chen Yun tapped his finger on the examination report placed on the table. Master, listen to me, I really am not mentally ill, Chen Yun waved his hand hurriedly. Hearing this title was really distracting, making him always think of some small movies he had seen before. You can call me by my name, or husband. Oh, okay, master. Chen Yun shook his head with some headache. Damn it. This is still not going to change. Let's take a closer look at the examination report, and let Qing Shui calm down as well. It seems like she was just shocked. 10 minutes later, Chen Yun's face showed a mixture of emotions. He was annoyed, angry, and frightened, but more than anything, he felt pity. Fortunately, he was reborn at this time. It was really fortunate, otherwise the woman in front of him might really be ruined. He couldn't understand some of the medical terms on the examination report, but he could understand some keywords and roughly understand what was going on. Qing Shui is indeed ill, but it is only a psychological illness, and it is all caused by prolonged depression. Put simply, it is psychological trauma. This has also led to Qing Shui's current weak personality. So long as he does not divorce, no matter what excessive conditions are proposed, he will obey. Chen Yun put down the medical report in his hands and rubbed his swollen temples. When he looked up at Qing Shui, he was suddenly stunned. No, this girl is really stupid. At some point, she had taken off her coat and returned to her original attire. She had also stood in the same position as before, maintaining her original posture. Apart from her reddened eyes, she was looking at him with a pout, but she hadn't done anything else. Chapter 4, Don't you dare lay a hand on my sister. Chen Yun was completely speechless. This was a stark contrast to his life and his previous life. One was Tang Yun, who spent all day just playing around outside, exhausting every inch of her value. The other was Qing Shui, who was obedient and submissive and only wanted to please him. The point was, in terms of appearance, Qing Shui was many times better than Tang Yun. This made it so that if a fool were to choose a wife, he wouldn't hesitate, and besides, Chen Yun's IQ was still in line. It was also because of this that, unknowingly, Chen Yun's heart slowly leaned towards Qing Shui, and he empathized with her to a certain extent. You sit down first, let's talk. Okay, Lord. Stop. Call me by my name or my husband. This attire and this address caused Chen Yun's blood to flow rapidly. Qing Shui sat on the edge of the stool, and her fingers unconsciously clenched together again. Chen Yun looked at his palm, which was already covered in fingernail marks, and couldn't bear to pull her little hand. Don't squeeze anymore, it's all ready. Qing Shui misunderstood and thought he was asking her to come over. She hurriedly stood up and blushing, sat on Chen Yun's lap. Qing Shui moved around a bit and rubbed against him twice as if to please him. Chen Yun felt like he had lost the ability to think, which was definitely a test for a big, passionate young man. After a few minutes, he finally got used to the current situation. He asked softly, when did you get this disease? I can see that the date is a long time ago. I'm not sick. Qing Shui nervously pinched her fingers together, and realized that there was no pain, and then she reacted. Her hand had been held by Chen Yun the whole time. She hurriedly lifted Chen Yun's large hand and gently blew on it twice. With a voice tinged with a hint of a sob, she said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Then she kissed his hand as if it were a treasure. This set of silky little moves again gave Chen Yun a hard-on. No, who taught this woman all this? It's too provocative. If he didn't know Qing Xue's character, he would definitely think that this woman was doing it on purpose. Okay, I'm fine. Tell me the truth. When did you get this disease?
Seeing that Qing Xue was about to say the same thing again, he quickly added, confess and you'll be lenient.
Ha? Are we starting the interrogation process? Do you need to change your clothes?
Qing Xue turned her head, her mouth slightly open, looking at him dumbly.
What kind of interrogation is this? What kind of strange characters are these? They're really playing around.
Qing Xue looked at Chen Yun's somewhat serious face and hurriedly turned back to him, saying, it was discovered when Tang
Yun cheated you out of money. Chen Yun frowned slightly.
It had indeed been a long time. But there was one thing he could never figure out, why had Qing Xue, with her looks, not divorced him, when there was no child to bind them together? With her personality and looks, she would be the mistress in any rich man's circle, so why stay with a loser like him? In the past few days, he had checked the balance of his bank card, and there were still hundreds of thousands of dollars left from selling the company.
In other words, Qing Xue was not doing it for the money at all. So what was it for? At this time, Qing Xue whispered, Lord, husband, can we not get a divorce? Why? Ha? Do you need a reason for that?
Qing Xue turned her head and looked at him in surprise.
If I have to say a reason, it's because I love you.
This time, Qing Xue's eyes did not dodge, and she kept looking into Chen Yun's eyes, as if she was saying something that was only natural.
At that moment, Chen Yun's heart completely melted. He had never seen any girl say these 3 words so sincerely. Qing Xue continued to murmur, have you forgotten how we met?
You saved me, and now you're just being confused by Tang Yun.
I believe that one day you will come back to me.
They looked at each other, and at that moment, Chen Yun saw an emotion in Qing Xue's eyes called hope. There was no fear, no cowardice, and no grievance that made people want to pity her when they looked at her. Amidst his chaotic thoughts, Qin Yun recalled the scene when the two met. At that time, Qing Shui had just graduated from university. She came from a small mountain village and started looking for work everywhere with only a few $100s.
But that's the way the world is, picking on honest people. Her money was stolen.
Just as she was crouching helplessly and crying by the roadside, Chen Yin happened to pass by and bought her some food and gave her 200 yuan.
That's how the two met.
It's a bit of an exaggeration to say they saved each other's lives, it was just something that came naturally.
But Qing Xue has never forgotten it. Chen Yun let out a long sigh. This really is a silly girl.
Qing Xue leaned into his embrace and pulled his big hand to rest on her pale, soft belly.
Honey, can I discuss something with you?
The unrestrained body odor lingered on Chen Yun's nose, making him a little dazed, and his fingers rubbed back and forth impolitely.
What is it? Chen Yun suppressed his voice. Can you stop hitting on my sister? After saying that, he placatedly placed that evil claw where it belonged. Chapter 5 Treatment like an emperor. Ha!
Chen Yun could not help but feel the soft touch of her hand, and he was completely dumbfounded.
There was no other expression on his face, just shock. He then remembered that Qing Xue's younger sister was still in school and living with him. Was he such a beast? He had started to hit on her younger sister? He sorted through the memories in his mind and finally shook his head helplessly, as if it really happened. However, he did want to understand why Qing Xue insisted on not divorcing him.
On the one hand, it was because of her younger sister Qingli. If they got divorced, the two sisters would become homeless, and Qingli was at a critical time in her studies and could not afford to make any mistakes. On the other hand, there was the factor of her original family. Qing Xue's hometown was a very closed-off small mountain village, where the custom was that a girl who married out was like water poured out. If she dared to get a divorce, the villagers would know about it, and there would be no shortage of versions spread. Her family could not afford to lose face. The last, and most important, factor was her personality, or rather her mental illness, which caused her to hang herself on her own tree.
She never even considered running away.
She really was a one-track-minded girl. After Chen Yun had figured everything out, his feelings for Qing Xue deepened a little more. Whether it was pity or affection, he understood one thing. It was redemption. It sounded ridiculous, because he hadn't done those things himself, so there was no guilt to speak of. But as he understood the whole story, he felt more and more that the destiny of this world was really his own. This thought was like an ungerminated seed, hovering in his mind, landing, and finally taking root and sprouting, unable to disperse.
Just as Qing Xue said, he was enchanted by Tang Yun and that's why he did such an absurd thing. Now that he has been reborn, why not take this opportunity to treat this young woman in his arms better? As I said, having such an obedient older sister as a wife is a good deal. Qing Xue did not hear his reply, and slowly leaned over, but did not mean to get off Chen Yun's body. She had not felt such a warm embrace for many years, and she did not want to leave. She twisted her body a few times and changed to a comfortable position, leaning her whole body against Chen Yun's body, just like a wounded kitten looking for comfort in its owner's arms. Chen Yun's breathing gradually became rapid, and his hands slowly increased in strength, sliding unconsciously. Fortunately, Qing Xue's soft voice sounded, which made Chen Yun sober up a bit. "Husband, did you hear what I just said?" Chen Yun hurriedly said softly, "I heard it." "You misunderstood. I won't have any thoughts about Qingli." Qing Xue immediately nodded happily, "I knew it. It's all other people talking nonsense. How could my husband do such a thing?" These words instantly made Chen Yun feel ashamed. This woman is still gullible, believing whatever he says. But it doesn't matter anymore, as long as I don't have any more thoughts about Qingli in the future. After everything had been sorted out, Chen Yun looked at the 4 dishes and 1 soup on the table, and his stomach made an uncontrollable gurgling sound. Pork belly in a sweet and sour sauce, steamed fish, tofu with dried chili peppers, peanuts, and a seaweed and egg soup, all of which he loved. Not only is his wife beautiful, she also cooks so well. It really is a feast for the eyes, nose, and taste buds. He said softly, "Let's eat first, before the food gets cold." "Okay, I'll go get the rice." Qing Xue felt better when she saw Chen Yun being so gentle. She took a bowl of rice and handed it to Chen Yun, then stood up, leaned forward, picked up a piece of fish, removed the bones, and placed it next to his mouth. Chen Yun chewed the fish in his mouth. He really was attentive and good-looking. "Old wife, I can do it myself. You should sit down and eat too." This was the first time he had called Qing Xue this, and he was still not quite used to it. Chen Yun took a plastic chair and placed it next to him, gesturing for her to sit down. Qing Xue did not move, her head bowed, and she murmured coquettishly, I want to sit on top of you." Chen Yun was stunned. This was the first time he had heard such an unreasonable request. He excitedly patted his leg, "Sit wherever you like." A fluttering passed through Qing Xue's eyes. That kind of look, Chen Yun had never seen before. It was as if someone had walked in a dark tunnel for a long, long time, and suddenly found a beam of light ahead. "My husband is so good, I love you the most," she said, and then gave him a strong kiss on the cheek. Then she sat on his lap, happily moving her 2 little feet around. "You don't seem to be comfortable eating like this, let me feed you." Qing Xue leaned over, picked up the chopsticks and started the feeding job, and incidentally placed one of his big hands on her waist and pressed it hard, as if he was afraid she would fall. Chen Yun swallowed hard. This is definitely not being reincarnated as an ancient emperor? I wouldn't dare do this in my dreams. His mood was very complicated at this time. No one could bear to hold such a delicate wife in their arms, and his hormones were already exploding. She really is soft and pliable, with a small waist that's easy to hold, and silky, tender skin that's been well maintained. Qing Xue felt the changes in Chen Yun's body, and her face flushed as she said shyly, You can move around, as long as you don't delay me from feeding you." She was afraid that Chen Yun would misunderstand something, so she added in a small voice, "I'm willing." Chapter 6 Because I Love You. The two of them ate for a long time, and Chen Yun felt his blood boil. His large hands were hot and unearthly, and every time he moved, their bodies trembled. Qing Xue was limp and powerless in his arms, and a different feeling filled her heart. It was just too gentle, and the gentle Qing Xue thought she was dreaming. The feeling she got was that Chen Yun was now treating her like a precious work of art, being careful with everything he did, afraid of breaking her. It was a world of difference from his violent past. After the meal, Qing Xue's face was flushed with a little flirtatious charm. "Honey, go take a break, I'll clean up the kitchen." "I'll help you." Qing Xue quickly held him back. "How can you do that? Go take a rest." After saying that, she tiptoed and kissed him on the cheek, then expertly cleaned up the dishes. Looking at Qing Xue's busy back, bent over washing the dishes, her figure was incredibly attractive. Chen Yun walked up behind her and whispered, "Don't go to work anymore." In his memory, Qing Xue had always worked as a salesperson in a supermarket. In this small third-tier city, her monthly salary was only about 3,000 yuan, and the workload was very heavy every day. Not to mention the usual expenses, even Qing Xue's tuition fees were barely covered with that little money. Xue smiled and said, "That's not going to work. If I don't work, how will I have any money? You don't have to work so hard. I'll go out and make money." Xue put a clean bowl aside and said softly, "It's good that you're home. I found a part-time job these past 2 days, so I might be home late, but I'll be earning a few tens of dollars every day." She looked up at Chunyun slightly, her clear eyes full of laughter. "I'll make money to support you," she said playfully, half joking. Chunyun felt as if the switch had been flipped off by these words, and he stood there, motionless, looking at the woman in front of him. If words had an attack power, he would have been pierced to pieces long ago. He and Tang Yun had said similar things to each other before, but in return he had only received her merciless ridicule. But now a woman had said the same thing to him, and he could understand the hardship behind the words. Chunyun slowly walked up behind Xue, gently embraced her from behind, rested his chin on her shoulder, and placed his hands through her soft waist to grasp her pale fingers. "Silly, is it worth it?" "Huh?" Xue was momentarily stunned, then understood what he meant. "Of course it's worth it, because I love you." Hearing this, Yun was completely conquered. Both mentally and physically, he felt that he had fallen in love with this silly and lovely woman. Xue was still busy with her work, but her body leaned back forcefully, greedily enjoying this warm embrace. Two souls looking for mutual comfort merged at this moment, as if guided by something in the dark. After a long time, Xue reluctantly struggled out of his arms. No matter how Chunyun persuaded her, she insisted on going to work, but she did concede and cancel her evening part-time job. As he watched Xue rush out the door, Chunyun sniffed the scent of her body that lingered in the palm of his hand. She really is a beauty, and he already looked forward to the show that would happen when Xue came back at night. Chunyun picked up the physical examination report on the table and carefully looked up some more cases online. Only then did he understand some of the details. Xue's illness was very specific, but it was not troublesome to treat. She didn't need to take too many psychotropic drugs, and the key was to give her enough care. As long as she no longer had a repressive environment, she would return to normal in no time. Chunyun shook his head helplessly. Why did it feel a bit like a sickly girl? If that was the case, it seemed like it would be a good experience. Putting down the report in his hands, he stood up and stretched his stiff body. Let's go out for a walk and get familiar with the surroundings. Although there is still enough money to spend, he always has to plan for his future life. After changing his clothes and taking his keys, he set off. Although the summer in Ningxuan City is not as hot as the south, you can feel the heat coming at you when you go out. Chunyun walked out of the residential area, walking aimlessly and pondering his next plan. Chapter 7: The Perfect Girl. In the evening, Chunyun walked back to the residential area. When he arrived at his door, he looked at the ajar door and froze for a moment, before hearing the voices of two women inside. "Sister, I really don't want to go to school anymore, I've already found a job." Xue said anxiously. "No, I will never agree to this." Chunyun leaned against the door and looked inside through the crack. A young girl was facing away from him, and Xue was holding her hand, persuading her. "Sister, you can't let that scum bully you again because of me. You forgot that he hit you last time he came back." Xue argued, "Didn't I tell you? He was just infatuated. He's already come to his senses. Our lives will only get better from now on. Only a fool like you would believe his nonsense. Anyway, no matter what you say, I've already made up my mind. I'm not going to school anymore, so you don't have to pay the tuition." After saying that, the young girl turned around and wanted to go back to her bedroom. Mei. "No need to say anymore, just hurry up and divorce him." Creak. The door opened and Chunyun walked in. He had heard the conversation clearly just now, and if he didn't come out and make a stand at this time, I'm afraid Mei really would drop out of school. Looking at the little girl in front of him, wearing a red and white school uniform, he suddenly brightened up. No wonder Xue said he had feelings for her. The little girl was 18 or 19 years old, and needless to say, she had a pretty face, which was somewhat similar to Xue's, but with more youthful vitality. She was tall and had fair skin. Even the loose school uniform couldn't hide her shapely body curves, which were full of pleasing artistic beauty. Her long, slender legs were even more attractive to straight men. Xue's face was full of anger, but every now and then she revealed two dimples. The spring breeze was bright and beautiful, and the girl's smile was like a flower. This was the first impression that Chunyun got. When the girl saw Chunyun, her face immediately became gloomy.
An inadvertent glance revealed an indifferent and detached beauty that was unaware of itself, quite a sense of absolute killing with one glance. Xingxue saw her sister's change in expression and was afraid that she would say something unpleasant. She said awkwardly, "Honey, you're home." "I heard what you were saying just now," said Chen Yun, not continuing with Xingxue's words, but directly addressing what had just happened. Xingxue's face changed rapidly, and she hurriedly stood between Chen Yun and her younger sister, looking at him with pleading eyes. "Honey, Qingling is young and doesn't know any better. Don't listen to her nonsense. I apologize for her. I'm sorry, honey." Qingling saw her sister's submissive behavior, and the anger hidden in her heart completely exploded. "Chen Yun, you son of a bitch, you're not a human being. You hit my sister as soon as you get back. If you dare to hit me again, I'll call the police." "Shut up." Xingxue turned around and looked at her younger sister and shouted, "How dare you talk to your brother-in-law like that? Go back to your room and study." "Sister! Go back!" Xingxue's face had turned pale, watery mist appeared in her eyes, and she kept shaking her head at Qingning. She held onto Chen Yun's arm with both hands, for fear that he would suddenly get up and hurt her younger sister. The two rarely see each other during the week, and in order not to affect Qingni's studies, they let her board at school and only come home a few times a month. Humph. Seeing her sister in such a difficult situation, Qingni stopped talking, picked up her school bag from the ground, turned sharply, kicked the chair in front of her, and tried to go back to the room. "Wait." There was a brief silence in the room. Xingxue heard Chen Yun's words and felt a chill down her spine, as if something terrible was staring at her. Her body trembled as she grabbed Chen Yun. "I'm sorry, honey, it's all my fault. Xingxi has been spoiled by me. I'll let her go right away, don't be angry." "Sister, why are you begging him? He dared to hit me today." Chen Yun suddenly turned around and embraced Xingxue's trembling body in his arms, holding her very tightly. His jaw rested against her thin collarbone, slowly rubbing it as if this could ease the pain in his heart like a knife cutting through. The two sisters were stunned by his sudden action. The room fell silent again, but this time, there was less of a worrying atmosphere. After a few minutes, Xingxue reacted, as Chen Yun had never been so gentle with her. Thinking about her younger sister still nearby, she struggled lightly. "What's wrong with you?" Chen Yun slowly let go. "I'm fine." Then he looked at the girl. "Qingli, you can't quit school. It's hard to get ahead in this society without a diploma. Don't waste your sister's hard work." "None of your business." Qingmei looked at Chen Yun coldly, put down her school bag, and didn't leave, wanting to see what kind of tricks Chen Yun could play this time. "I know that no matter what I say, I can't make up for the years of debt I owe your sister, and you won't believe what I say, but your sister won't agree to dropping out of school either, so just leave the tuition to me." At this time, Xingxue's phone rang with a message alert. Chapter 8, Trust Me for Once. Xingxue hurriedly picked up her phone to check the message, and then looked at Chen Yun's eyes full of disbelief. "This should be enough for Qingli's tuition fees. You don't have to worry about money in the future. Everything is in my hands." Chen Yun's tone was sincere, his eyes sincere, and he looked at Xingxue tenderly. Qingli glanced at the transfer amount and snorted, "What do you want again? You think you can do whatever you want with a little money? Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. I really don't have any other thoughts." He looked at Xingxue, who was still hesitant, and took her hand, saying, "Trust me for once, okay?" "Okay, fine." Xingxue looked at his sincere eyes and felt an inexplicable sense of unprecedented security in her heart. When Chen Yun saw that she had agreed, he quickly changed the subject. "Honey, I'm hungry, let's eat." Xingxue embarrassedly stuck out her tongue and said, "I went to pick up Qingni just now, and I haven't cooked yet. I'll go now." Seeing her return to her cute self, Chen Yun couldn't help but pinch her soft little face. "Don't go cook, you've had a long day too, let's go out to eat. Is there anything you want to eat?" Xingning's eyes were still cold, occasionally sweeping over Chen Yun's face, without saying anything in return. Seeing that neither sister was speaking, Chen Yun suggested, "Let's go eat hot pot. Is there any good hot pot nearby?" "Ha? Don't you hate eating hot pot?" Xingxue remembered very clearly that once she and her younger sister had hot pot at home. It was called hot pot, but even the minimum hot pot base was replaced with instant noodle seasoning. There was only a small plate of lamb, and the rest was some vegetables. The sisters usually spent very little, saving as much as they could in order to save more money for Qingling's tuition fees. Only when Chen Yun came back would Xingxue buy some fish and cook a whole table of dishes. The very small plate of lamb was bought when it was on sale, and Xingxue gritted her teeth to buy it. When the lamb was put into the pot, the sisters looked at the slowly rising white foam in the pot expectantly and couldn't help but swallow. At that moment, Chen Yun returned from outside, smelling of alcohol and drunk, and when he smelled the pungent smell of lamb in the house, he immediately cursed and overturned the table. The two sisters were so scared that they cowered in the corner, hugging each other and afraid to speak. From that time on, Qing Li Mei hated her brother-in-law with all her heart, without a trace of affection. Chen Yun picked up his phone and looked up nearby hot pot restaurants online, finding one with a high rating and reserving a private room.
Let's go, I've already made the reservation.
Xing Shui wanted to say something else, but Chen Yun had already pulled her out the door. Xing Ning was afraid that Chen Yun would do something to her sister, so she hurriedly followed them out. It was already sunset, and dusk was falling. A dark red sun was setting in the sky, painting everything around it a warm color. Chen Yun held Xing Shui's little hand as they slowly walked along the dilapidated asphalt road in the residential area. This feeling was wonderful, something he had never experienced before. This must be what people often refer to as happiness. The weather in June was already getting hot, and the residential area was full of residents cooling off in the shade. When they saw Chen Yun, they all whispered and pointed at him. When they reached the roadside, he reached out and hailed a taxi.
Driver, this location. The hot pot restaurant was not too far away, just a few minutes away.
After getting out of the car, Chen Yun carefully opened the door for Qing Shui and reached out to pull her towards the hot pot restaurant. Qing Shui let him hold her hand without struggling, just her beautiful eyes sweeping over his face from time to time. Lime followed behind the two, her eyebrows slightly furrowed, wondering what she was thinking. After entering the lobby, Chen Yun told the receptionist the number of the reserved private room, and the waiter led the three of them to the second floor. The restaurant was incredibly popular, with more than 10 tables on the first floor already full of people. The air was filled with the unique fragrance and the smell of fireworks. Although there was also a hall on the second floor, it was a bit more luxurious, with a waiter standing at the door of each private room.
Qing Shui hesitantly tugged on Chen Yun and whispered, "Is this place too expensive? Let's find a cheaper one."
Chen Yun didn't respond, but smiled and patted the back of Qing Shui's hand to comfort her. Qing Li was also curiously surveying her surroundings. She had never been to a restaurant that looked so high-class. After arriving at the private room, the three sat down. The waiter brought a disposable menu and handed Chen Yun a pencil. "Call me whenever you're done ordering."
Chen Yun took the menu and pencil and placed them in front of Qing Shui and Qing Li. "Order whatever you want."
The two sisters discussed something in a low voice with the menu in their hands. An expression of extreme caution appeared on their two beautiful faces as they carefully looked at the prices on the menu. They would only put a check mark after the dish name after much discussion.
Chapter 9, Going for Hot Pot.
He leaned over and glanced at the menu in Qing Shui's hands. The items with ticks were bone broth base, premium beef, shrimp paste, daylily, baby bok choy, spinach, pasha fish, corn, and crystal-wide noodles. All of them are Chen Yun's favorites.
He looked at the menu and casually asked, "Why don't you order some lamb?" Qing Shui looked up at Chen Yun and shook her head. "Lamb is not tasty." Chen Yun understood immediately.
She was afraid that he would dislike the gamey flavor. Thinking about this, Chen Yun was all the more moved, and a little sad for her. After the sisters had finished ordering, he took the menu, made some marks on it, and then called the waiter to take it away. In no time at all, the waiter wheeled a cart into the private room. Plates of meat and vegetables were neatly arranged on the table. Qing Shui hurriedly called out to the waiter, "Wait, these aren't what we ordered, the wrong dish was served.
We wanted a bone broth base, not spicy. My husband doesn't like spicy food." Then she pointed at the lamb and said, "And we didn't order this either." And put the bottle of red wine on the table back on the cart. "My husband doesn't like this, please change it. I ordered all this, so just keep serving it." Qing Shui looked at Chen Yun with confusion. Chen Yun smiled and said, "You like spicy food, you like lamb with a little fat, you like thicker potato slices, you like..."
Qing Shui couldn't hear the rest. She just stared at him with wide eyes, her lips trembling slightly, her gaze unfocused, and her eyes beginning to redden again.
Why did he still remember my preferences? Why is he so gentle? What's going on? Chen Yun's hand waved in front of her face. "What are you thinking about? Why are you spacing out?" "Huh? Nothing." Clatter.
Qing Shui waved her hands frantically, accidentally knocking the teacup onto the ground, where it shattered into 1,000 pieces. The broken glass reflected a colorful light under the overhead crystal chandelier, making everything seem so unreal. "Don't pick it up, you'll hurt yourself. Let the waiter clean it up." Shen Yun pulled Qingxue out from under the table, carefully took the broken glass in her hand and threw it on the table, and then carefully opened her palm to check if there were any remaining glass shards. After the waiter finished cleaning up, Qingxue still looked at Shen Yun a little dazed. This man seems to have really changed. Why does he still remember what happened a few years ago, when I only mentioned it casually? If not for Chen Yun's imitation of my tone just now, I would have forgotten that I had said those words.
Wife, do you need me to help you with the condiments? Ha? No, I'll go.
Qingxue hurriedly stood up and pulled Qingling, you go with me.
Shen Yun also didn't bother to get up.
He opened the red wine and poured 2 glasses, then picked up a tin of Coke and placed it in front of Qingling's seat. In no time at all, Qingxue returned with 2 bowls of condiments. The left one, which had a more sour and spicy taste, had chili oil, cumin, small chili peppers, sesame oil, coriander, chopped green onion, aged vinegar, etc., and was placed in front of her. The right one, which had a more sweet and spicy taste, had a small amount of chili oil, sesame paste, light soy sauce, sesame oil, chopped green onion, coriander, etc., and was placed in front of Shen Yun.
Honey, I rarely eat hot pot with you, so I don't know if it's to your liking. Try it, and if it's not good, you can give me your bowl and I'll adjust it again.
Qingxue's voice was soft and gentle. Seeing that he had dipped his chopsticks in it a little, she nodded repeatedly, kept saying how delicious it was, and then sat down, mixing the seasonings in the bowl. The hot pot was simmering warmly, the heat filling the air, and the spicy fragrance filling the air. Shen Yun picked up a few slices of lamb and put them in the pot, then picked up a plate of shrimp paste and poured it all in. Qing Li never spoke, keeping her face aloof. But when she looked at the hot pot, there was always a sense of caution in her eyes, as if the ingredients in the pot were something extraordinary. It's ready to eat, said Shen Yun, holding a colander and serving a spoonful of shrimp paste and lamb slices to the 2 sisters. Qing Li looked at the bowl of steaming, white and tender shrimp paste, which was gradually being stained brown by the sauce, and was full of satisfaction. Her cold face had relaxed quite a bit.
Hubby, you eat too. Qingxue picked up a piece of lamb and placed it in Shen Yun's bowl. Try the lamb, it's quite delicious.
Shen Yun wrapped the already reddish lamb in a thick layer of sauce and put it in his mouth. The fragrance of the sesame sauce did not succeed in blocking the spiciness. The moment it entered his mouth, the pain on the tip of his tongue exploded in his mouth. What followed was not as painful as he had imagined, but a tingling sensation at the root of his tongue.
It's really good. Delicious. A series of exclamations popped out of Chen Yun's mouth, unintelligible but audible.
Really, honey, Qingxue's face gradually filled with a smile, as if she had finally received Chen Yun's recognition of something she liked.
That feeling, well, it's very happy.
Chen Yun sighed inwardly. It seems that after being reborn, not only has his brain become a lot smarter, but his tastes have also changed a lot. Qing Li is pitifully quiet when eating, her expression meticulous and extremely serious as she takes small bites of the food in her bowl and chews slowly. She silently surveyed the scene in front of her, seeing that her sister and that scum were getting along quite well, so she stopped paying too much attention. She noticed that the salmon she had previously thrown into the hot pot had floated to the surface of the soup. She quickly picked up 2 slices, threw one into her own bowl, and put the other in her sister's bowl.
Shen Yun kept putting ingredients into the pot, acting as a temporary chef.
Qingxue was flattered by the meal, and had not been treated like this in years. This warm and heartwarming scene had appeared countless times in her dreams, but today it had come true, and finally they had a normal family meal. Their courage grew, and with Chen Yun's persuasion, the 2 of them almost finished a bottle of red wine. More than an hour later, Chen Yun was full, put down his chopsticks, and felt dizzy. He accidentally knocked his chopsticks on the ground, bent down to pick them up, and when he looked up suddenly, his pupils dilated and his blood flow accelerated. It seemed that he had seen a very erotic scene. Chapter 10 The temperature rises between the 2 of them. Qingxue is sitting next to him, still wearing the same floral dress, but the heat of the hot pot has caused her to pull it up quite a bit. Suddenly, Qingxue screams in surprise, "Ah!"
Bang! Ouch!
Chen Yun is startled by the sound, and he looks up, but forgets about the table and hits the back of his head firmly on it. The pain made him almost cry.
Sister, what's wrong? Qingling looked at the 2 of them in confusion.
Qingxue then reacted, realizing that it was Chen Yun who had caused the trouble. She was so scared that she hurriedly rubbed Chen Yun's head and apologized repeatedly. "I'm sorry, honey, are you okay? I didn't mean to scream, you." It's okay, Chen Yun said, his face red as he waved his hands. He really had stolen a chicken but lost a handful of rice.
Qing Shue was relieved to see that Chen Yun didn't seem angry.
Thinking about what had just happened, her face suddenly turned a little rosy, extending all the way to the back of her ears. She peeked at her sister, who was still bowing her head and eating. Then she leaned over to her husband's ear and whispered, "Honey, don't worry, wait." The hot breath and sweet words in her ear made Chen Yun feel a little unreal. At this time, Qing Shue bowed her head and ate the contents of her bowl, looking extremely calm, but her already red ears betrayed her. Looking at Qing Shue's perfect figure, his heartbeat suddenly accelerated.
How can I stand this? Damn it!
Qing Shue peeked at him and covered her mouth with a smile as she watched his expression. At this moment, Chen Yun was like a crazy man, his face red, his eyes staring at her blankly, and he kept swallowing. Qing Shue couldn't help but extend her slender jade fingers and rest them on Chen Yun's hand. Chen Yun seemed to have found an outlet, and he grabbed her hand with his other hand, gently stroking it, incredibly tender. Qing Shue was taken aback, and a warm current passed through her heart. When Chen Yun was at home, he was violent no matter what, and she was like an object, used casually, never afraid of breaking. But today's feeling was very different, he had become careful and gentle. This meal was somewhat romantic, at least for Chen Yun. When it came time to pay the bill, Chen Yun awkwardly took out his phone and handed it to Qing Shue. "Honey, you and Qingling go pay the bill first. I'm still a little thirsty, so I'm just having a cup of tea."
Yeah, that's it. Qing Shue glanced under the table and understood what was going on.
She looked at Chen Yun's blushing face and giggled, covering her mouth. She had never seen her husband look so embarrassed before. Then, looking at her phone, she looked a little overwhelmed and said, "Honey, I'll just pay the bill."
"I don't know your phone password. Your birthday, 0311.
In the afternoon, Chen Yun had changed the password on his phone to Qing Shue's birthday.
Ha! My birthday. Qing Shue's expression changed dramatically, from aggrieved and unwilling to happy and joyful, and finally she smiled, a big smile. Chen Yun's phone was off limits to her, she never dared to touch it, and even glancing at it would get her scolded. But now, Chen Yun had given her his phone, and the password had been changed to her birthday. A sense of contentment spread through Qing Shue's heart like never before.
She nodded vigorously, "Honey, I know, thank you," and led Qingling out of the private room. Qingling looked at her sister strangely. It seemed like something had really changed today. Her sister had smiled a lot, a smile that came from the heart. Since Qing Shue took her from the countryside to go to school in junior high school, things here have been the same as at home.
Whenever Chen Yun comes back, it's just a long period of mental attrition, with abuse and repression.
Sometimes she asks herself if it's because of her that violence is everywhere she goes. But there is one difference from home, now the target of abuse is her sister, not her. Fortunately, she has a sister who looks after her, but who will look after her? Therefore, she studied desperately, hoping to take care of her sister as soon as possible.
However, after entering her third year of high school, a large amount of expenses and pressure followed.
The sensible Qingling did not want to burden her sister anymore, and she wanted to give up and go out to make money. She even wanted to sell herself for a good price to make her sister feel better. But just now, when Chen Yun checked his account, he saw a glimmer of hope, even if it was only a glimmer. But she still wanted to wait, just wait. Just in case life can change for the better, the young girl could only comfort herself in this way. Chen Yun was still upstairs, worrying about how to go downstairs. What he didn't know was that after being reborn, he had not only changed Qing Shue's fate, but also Qingling's. 10 minutes later, the two sisters standing in the doorway saw Chen Yun slowly walking downstairs.
He scratched his head awkwardly and looked at Qing Shue apologetically.
A breeze blew, making the hot weather a little cooler.
"Are you tired? Let's walk back, just like a walk after dinner."
"It seems like there's a park ahead," Chen Yun suggested.
"Great, I ate a bit too much too."
Qing Shue was happy as a child, dancing around. Qingli didn't have an opinion, but her face was still cold. On both sides of the road, a row of camphor trees were in full bloom. The bright moonlight shone through the gaps in the leaves and hit the road, casting a faint shadow and dotting it with bright spots.
Chen Yun and Qing Shue walked side by side.
The scent of their bodies mingled with the fresh fragrance of the trees, and they couldn't help but inhale deeply. Perhaps Chen Yun was in a good mood today, and Qing Shue unconsciously moved a little closer to him. As their arms swung, their hands brushed together several times.
Chen Yun's body grew more and more rigid.
Each time, he wanted to boldly take Qing Shue's hand, but it was all fleeting. The loss and hope in his heart alternated with each
other. Chapter 11, Qingxi got into trouble.
Xingxue also noticed his unusual behavior, as if she knew what was going on in his mind, and tentatively took his hand. When the two hands met, Qinyun's body paused, and his heart stopped for a few seconds. Then, a large amount of hormones were secreted, and a feeling of happiness exploded. Her hands were soft and delicate, her skin like fresh cream. The tips of her fingers were like bamboo shoots, crisp and tender like white lotus roots.
This was how Chen Yun felt right now.
Xingxue saw that Chen Yun did not object to holding hands, so she took his arm directly into her arms, as if to gain an inch in advance of foot, and placed her head on his shoulder, leaning her whole body on him. It had been a long time since she had enjoyed such a comfortable walk.
The last time she was able to hold his arm was the last time.
She hoped that this dream would last a little longer.
And above Chen Yun's head, wisps of smoke were already rising. Is this the kind of life I should be having at my age? Awesome! Salute, salute!
Luckily, it was nighttime, so no one could see the changes in little Chen Yun. When the three of them arrived home, it was already past 10 p.m. Xingling didn't say much, greeted her sister, and went back to her room to study with a cold face. Xingxue felt Chen Yun's fiery gaze, and she hurriedly lowered her head, the blush on her face spreading behind her ears. She whispered, Go take a shower, take off your clothes, I'll do it."
"Okay." Chen Yun agreed.
After taking a shower, Chen Yun sat uncomfortably in the bedroom, walking back and forth, occasionally leaning at the door and watching the busy figure in the bathroom.
His mind couldn't stop playing those romantic action movies. Squeak!
Afraid that Chen Yun had already fallen asleep, Xingxue carefully opened the door. When she saw the unhidden desire in his eyes, as he scanned her body, she immediately froze like a frightened rabbit, her head buried in her chest. Thinking about the violence of Chen Yun every time, regardless of her life or death, she was still very scared.
Shue, what's wrong?" "No, nothing, I'm just a little scared." Chen Yun walked over and took her hand, speaking softly, "Forget the past, let's start over, okay?"
Xingxue looked into his gentle eyes, her anxiety gradually disappearing, and nodded vigorously.
"Then, just wait for me a moment."
She opened the closet door and took out the Pandora's box that Chen Yun liked. Chen Yun's eyes widened the moment he saw what was inside the box.
How could there be so many styles of this thing?
Xingxue had already run to the bed, covered herself with the quilt, and wrapped herself up tightly like a sushi roll. Seeing her panicked appearance, Chen Yun understood that what Xingxue needed at this time was not gentle reassurance, and only practical actions could convince her of the changes she had made. He had seen many of these cheesy little dramas, and in order to show his remorse, the two could only.
Ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous.
With his abundant theoretical knowledge, Chen Yun knew what a woman needed most at this time.
Xingxue suddenly felt someone hugging her from behind.
Her nervous little hands clasped together, her beautiful eyes tightly shut, afraid to open them. After a few minutes, nothing happened as she had imagined, so she opened her eyes in puzzlement, only to feel a hot cheek pressed against her back, occasionally rubbing against her. It had been a long time since she had been hugged like this by him, and it was very warm and comfortable. At this point, Xingxue slowly grew more and more emboldened, slowly poking her way out from under the covers and starting her usual task. Her skilled movements made Chen Yun's thoughts a little difficult to follow. To put it simply, he crashed, unable to start up again. The collision of theoretical knowledge and practical attempts was perfectly interpreted at this moment.
And then, there was no then. Xingxue passed out happily.
In the morning, Chen Yun slowly opened his eyes. The room was still filled with the unique body odor of Xingxue. A moment later, he heard the sound of cooking in the kitchen.
He got up and walked out of the bedroom, looking into the kitchen.
The morning sun shone through the glass window and reflected on Xingxue, casting a layer of clean and beautiful hazy light on her hair, skin, and skirt. The corner of his mouth lifted slightly.
It was so good.
It wasn't a dream, everything was real. Xingxue heard a noise and turned her head to see Chen Yun. She smiled and said, "Honey, you got up so early."
"Just wait a little longer and you can eat."
She looked at her phone and saw that it was already past 8 o'clock. Xingxue's daughter, Li Mei, had already left for school. Xingxue was concentrating on stir-frying the vegetables in the wok when a tall figure embraced her from behind. Her slightly stubbly chin rested on her shoulder. A gentle voice sounded in her ear, "You worked hard." The sudden hug caused a pleasant blush to appear on Xingxue's face again, and she said coyly, "Go out quickly, it's all oily."
At this time, Xingxue's phone rang, and she hurriedly turned off the heat and answered the phone. "Hello." A few seconds later, Qingshua's face suddenly changed, and she said anxiously, "Don't worry, I'll be right there." "What's wrong?" Qingshua's face had turned pale. "Qingming got into trouble at school and is likely to be expelled. The teacher told me to go there now." Chapter 12, Bullying and Framing. Chen Yun frowned slightly. Qingning didn't seem like the type to get into trouble. What happened? "I don't know, Teacher Li didn't say." "I'll go over there now and take a look." Qing Shui hurriedly got dressed. Turning to Chen Yun, she said apologetically, "You just help yourself to something to eat. I'll be back as soon as I can." "Don't worry, let's go together, just leave anything to me." In that moment, Qingshua's worries disappeared, and looking at Chen Yun, who was slightly smiling, she nodded gratefully. Is this what it feels like to be protected? It's so good. Soon, the two arrived at Qingli's school. Walking through the hall, they saw a large group of students and teachers gathered around the water room door on the first floor, and there was a constant noise coming from there. Through the crowd, she saw Qingling standing by the wall. The young girl looked a little disheveled at the moment, with dust covering her school uniform pants. She kept her head down, her hands clenched, and half her hair blocked her pretty face, making it hard to see her expression. A director of the teaching affairs office was holding a white bottle in his hand and looking at her with a gloomy expression on his face. "What's going on? Did you really put this in the water tank?" "I didn't," Qingling said coldly. "Put. We all saw you poison the water tank, and you still dare to argue?" A girl standing nearby snorted. Qingming looked up at the girl and her eyes were full of coldness. The homeroom teacher, Li, stood to the side with a slight frown. The filter tank in this water room was specifically for supplying water to the cafeteria. Usually, some students who are taking physical education classes will come over to drink water, so the school spent a lot of money installing this tank with very good filtering properties. Although he didn't know what the white powder in the bottle was, if Qingning really did this, she would be in big trouble. Director Zhang of the Teaching Affairs Office looked at Qingning with a cold face. He had heard about this young girl for a long time. Her academic performance was very good, but she had a strange personality and didn't get along well with her classmates. She always kept to herself. Now she was accused of poisoning, and this was a bit of a problem. He turned to look at the surrounding students and asked again, "You all saw it?" "Yes, we saw it and can all testify to it," the boys said in unison. In that case, Director Zhang also had a headache. It didn't seem like the girl would do such a thing, but the crowd was speaking with one voice, and she couldn't just side with her just because she had good grades. Teacher Li came over and said in a stern voice, "Director Zhang, don't worry. Qingling's parents are already on their way. Let's wait until they get here." At this time, Qingshui parted the crowd and walked over to Qingni, looking apologetically at the teacher beside her. "Teacher Li, I'm sorry to cause you trouble again." "Did Qingni make a mistake?" Teacher Li said, "It's like this. This morning, these students saw Qingni put an unknown object into the water tank." The female student yelled from the side, "Your child is really something, how dare he poison the water? This filtration equipment must have cost tens of thousands of dollars, and the damage to the cafeteria is even greater, there will be no lunch for the rest of the day." Hearing so much money, Qingxue suddenly panicked, so anxious that she was about to cry. She kept bowing to the teacher and apologizing profusely. Qingni grabbed her sister's arm several times, trying to stop her, but Qingxue held on tightly, protecting her behind her back. Shenyan looked into the bathroom and sure enough, there were signs of forced entry on the top of the water tank, which was more than a person tall, and the lid had been opened a little. Looking at the students who had testified, they all looked at the two sisters with a slight sneer, their mouths turned up, and their faces were full of unspeakable complacency. He walked over to Qing Shui and pulled her up, who was still bowing. Qing Ning looked up and saw Chen Yun. She didn't expect this person to follow her sister here, and she should be here to see the joke. After all, she had never given him a good face. "Qingxue, don't rush to apologize." Chen Yun turned his head and said softly, "Qingni, what happened?" Qingni didn't expect him to ask her, so she pouted and kept her head down without saying a word. "Who is this?" Teacher Li had never met Chen Yun before. "This is my husband." Qingxue looked at her sister and said, "Say something, what's going on?" "Your brother-in-law is asking you." Hearing her sister's question, Qingning said, "This morning." "No, that's not what I want to ask." Chen Yun walked over to Qingning and his voice was still gentle. "What I want to ask is, did you do this?" "It wasn't me, today." "That's enough, I'll take care of the rest." Chen Yun looked up, smiled, and gave Qingming a comforting pat on the head. Xing Ming then looked up at Chen Yun. Chen Yun had dressed up for school, with his hands in his pockets. Standing in front of her, he was 1.8 meters tall, which gave him a sense of pressure. His face showed no signs of urgency, and there was even a hint of a smile. His hair was slightly long, partially covering his eyes, and his chin had a few green stubble hairs. He looked handsome and carefree. Xing Limei lowered her head, her fists clenching a little tighter. What was she thinking? This was a scumbag in human skin, and her sister had been nearly killed by him over the years. Shen Yun did have a good appearance, otherwise Qing Shui would not have put up with him for so many years. You guys saw Qing Limei go to the bathroom by herself? The female classmate named Li Na shrugged her shoulders. Yes, we saw it. She did it. We saw it too. Yes, we can all testify. The male classmates followed suit, laughing and joking. Xingling's cold face was slightly angry as she defended herself. It was you who pushed me into the bathroom. You're really stubborn. There were so many of us and we still got it wrong. For a moment, the scene became chaotic as Qingling and Li Na argued. After listening for a while, Chen Yun probably understood what had happened. There were two completely different versions, but he was more inclined to believe what Qing Ning had said. In the morning, after arriving at school, Xing Ning was walking past the water room when she was suddenly pushed in by these people. Before she could react, someone shoved a white pill bottle into her hand. When Cheng Ning tried to struggle to get away, she was pushed to the ground, and at this time, the teacher came over. What's more, coincidentally, the surveillance camera in front of the water room broke down a few days ago. Chen Yun said indifferently, "Oh? A frame-up?" Then he walked up to the group and asked with a smile, "You are the so-called witnesses?" Looking at the man walking over, the group felt a sense of oppression. Li Na suddenly realized that the man in front of her seemed to be different from the rumors. Everyone said that Qing Ning only had a weak sister at home to take care of her, and that her brother-in-law was a scumbag who kept a mistress and never came home. He would come home drunk and beat her sister up. Now it seemed that it wasn't the case. It seems that Qingling's brother-in-law is not someone to be trifled with. While Li Na was hesitating, a boy behind her stepped forward and said disdainfully, "Yes, so what if I saw it? Anyway, she just had to stick to this story, and with so many people as witnesses, what could the other party do?" Pop. The next second, his face was slapped by Qing Yun, and the sound was even heard throughout the corridor. Chapter 13, Who Dares Bully My Qingmei? The boy felt the burning pain on his face and was instantly dumbfounded. Not only was he dumbfounded, but so were the several teachers and students standing nearby. This. You dared to hit me? High school boys are all hot-tempered, and with so many classmates watching, how could he just lose face like that? He charged over and wrestled with Chen Yun. When the boy was beaten and bleeding from the nose and mouth, the two were pulled apart by the surrounding teachers. Calm down. This parent cannot fight. Honey, are you okay? Xing Shui went up to embrace Chen Yun, afraid that he would continue to fight, and looked at the bruise on his cheek with pain. Chen Yun patted Xing Shui's back and said softly, "Don't worry, it's fine. Call the police, don't let this person go." The boy's swollen cheek was already deformed at this time. He looked at Chen Yun, but the other person's indifferent gaze looking down at him made him feel an immense fear. Li Na, who was standing next to him, didn't expect things to develop like this. Trembling, she said, "Yes, call the police and arrest this person." "Okay, call the police. If you don't know the number for 110, I'll call," Chen Yun agreed. Xing Shui anxiously tugged on Chen Yun's sleeve, afraid that he would be arrested by the police. After all, he was the one who started it. Chen Yun took her little hand and gave it a gentle pat twice to show her that she was fine, and even scratched back and forth on the palm of her hand a few times. Xing Shui's expression became unnatural, and she thought to herself, "What's the point of doing this at a time like this?" Chen Yun took out his phone and said indifferently, "If the police come, they will quickly find out what happened. With these petty tricks of yours, it's really not enough." Then, his gaze swept over the several witnesses, maliciously damaging school property, and the key point is that there was also poisoning. I believe you all know what the crime of poisoning is. Hearing Chen Yun's words, the students behind Li Na were scared white. Chen Yun continued with a cold stare, "Don't even think about going to school again, you might spend the rest of your life in prison." Although what he said was a bit exaggerated, it was enough to make these students mentally disturbed. The few people then realized the seriousness of the matter. This was not at all a frame-up between classmates. If the police really came, they would quickly find out the truth of the matter.
One of them shouted in fear, "Don't call the police, it was all because Li Na told us to do it, and it wasn't even poison, it was just ordinary chalk dust." The others echoed, "It has nothing to do with us. We only thought it was a normal joke, and we didn't expect the consequences to be so serious." Li Na was dumbfounded. Things had not developed at all as she had expected. She had thought that there was no way that Qingling could turn things around, and that the school would not choose to report to the police in order to calm the matter down, but would simply let Qingling pay compensation and expel him from school to end the matter. But unexpectedly, Chen Yun came out of nowhere and disrupted all plans. Several teachers nearby also instantly understood what was going on, and their eyes turned angry as they looked at the students. "It's so boring to confess so quickly." Chen Yun shook his head with little interest, then swept the teachers and students present with a ferocious look and said, "Do you really think my Qingling is someone to be bullied? Anyone who dares to use these tactics again will have to deal with me. Hee, you should all have heard of my name, Chen Yun. I'm a scumbag, but I can handle you students with ease." Everyone present was shocked by Chen Yun's aura. After all, his reputation was really not good, and he was just a scoundrel and rogue. At this moment, Qingling, who had been standing behind the others, saw that Chen Yun had instantly helped her solve the problem, and she also looked at the scene in a daze. So, this was the power of having an adult in the family? This feeling is so good. No one has ever stood up for her before, and without asking what happened, they just chose to believe in her. Chen Yun walked over to Qingling, crouched down, and gently patted the dust off her school uniform pants a few times. His voice became gentle again. "Are you hurt?" Qingling shook her head and pointed at the bruises on Chen Yun's face without saying a word. "Don't worry, they're all superficial injuries, they don't hurt anymore." His voice was very gentle, which calmed the girl's apprehensive mood quite a bit. At this time, the principal ran over. He already knew what had happened. "Qingling's parents, I never thought this could happen at school, I'm really sorry." Teacher Li whispered, "Let's leave this to our school, don't call the police. Qingling's high school is a key institution with an important reputation. If this incident spreads, I'm afraid it will cause a lot of negative comments." Chen Yun still respects this homeroom teacher very much, as she was the only one who helped Qingling speak up just now. "Teacher Li, I'll give you face on this one and not report it to the police for now." Chen Yun turned his head and looked at the principal. "How do you want to resolve this?" The principal immediately said, "Don't worry, I will definitely investigate to the bottom." Lina felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave upon hearing this, and her fear reached a peak. She never expected the thugs from Qingling's family to protect her so fiercely and without any regard for reason, daring to get physical with her. Chen Yun turned his head and looked at the young girl, speaking softly, "Come home with me, no school today." He then chatted with the homeroom teacher for a while, and led the two sisters out of the school gates. Qingxue had been holding onto Chen Yun's large hand, and since the fight earlier, had not taken her eyes off his face. Now that they were outside the school gate, she no longer tried to hide it. Admiration, relief, and even more so, pain, flashed in her beautiful eyes. "Honey, are you okay?" Qingxue wanted to touch the bruised area, but was afraid of hurting him. Her fingers stopped in mid-air, flustered and at a loss. There was even a mist in her eyes, showing signs that she was about to cry. "Wait for me a second." Qingxue was still worried, so she turned and walked towards the pharmacy next door, leaving her sister and Chen Yun standing on the roadside. For a moment, Qingling lowered her head nervously. After all, she had caused the trouble herself, and she had been called in as a parent. She couldn't escape being scolded. Seeing that Chen Yun had just stood up for her, she decided to endure it and let it pass, as long as he didn't do anything. Qingling comforted herself in this way. Chen Yun walked up to her and said, "Qingning." Before Chen Yun could finish, Qingning lowered her head and said coldly, "I'm sorry, I was wrong today and I caused you trouble. In the future." "What?" Chen Yun interrupted her and said softly, "I want to ask you, are you hungry? Your sister and I haven't had breakfast yet, do you want to eat something?" Qingning thought she heard it wrong. He didn't scold me. Is this still the scumbag who only knows how to beat up his sister? At this moment, the two were standing in the shade of a tree. Looking up, a beam of clear sunlight shone down just above their heads, illuminating the handsome and gentle face. The eyelashes fluttered, and the starlight danced. The breeze blew, messing up the thin hair on Qing Limei's forehead. At that moment, Qing Limei was blinded by the sunlight, and her vision became a little blurry. Is this what it feels like to have parents? It's pretty good. Chapter 14, The Lovely Young Mistress. Qingxue ran back with a bottle of anti-swelling and anti-bruising spray in her hand, saying with concern, "Hubby, close your eyes, I'll spray it on for you." After her treatment, it did work, and Chen Yun could no longer feel any pain. However, Qingxue was not satisfied, and took out a pink band-aid with a bear pattern on it and wanted to stick it on his face.
Chen Yun refused firmly, and she gave up. "Honey, you must be hungry. Let's go home for dinner." "No, let's not go home. Let's grab a bite to eat somewhere. We have some time today, so let's go to the nearby mall."
Qingxue looked at Chen Yun blankly, her face showing signs of guilt.
"Huh? What's wrong?" Chen Yun looked at her in puzzlement.
Qingxue looked at him with a pout and said, "Honey, it's all our fault. Xingming caused such a big mess at school and got you hurt."
Chen Yun gently pulled Qingxue into his arms and said softly, "Silly, what are you talking about? Aren't we family? I should do all this.
And even if Xingning is at fault, it's up to us to educate her, not those brats. Besides, Xingning is not at fault." These words were spoken very quietly, but the sisters heard them clearly.
Qingxue choked and said, "Husband."
Chen Yun saw her looking at him with tear-filled eyes, and he fumbled around on her face, wiping away the tears, but the more he wiped, the more they came.
Qingxue saw his anxious expression and cried even more. "No, honey, don't cry. Xingni, quickly persuade your sister, what should we do?"
Xingni pursed her lips to hold back a smile, turned her head to look elsewhere, and put on an expression of nonchalance. The breeze blew, and a pleasant smell filled the air. After a while, Chen Yun coaxed her into stopping her tears. After arriving at the mall, the three of them ate something casual and started shopping. "This one is too expensive, let's go to another store," Qingxue whispered, looking at the 4-digit price tag.
"Try it on, I want to see it, okay?"
Chen Yun's tone carried a hint of expectation. Sure enough, this trick worked very well. As long as Chen Yun wanted to see it, she was willing to wear it. After finding the right size, Qingxue ran to the fitting room. A few minutes later, she came out and stood in front of the mirror. It was like she was a different person, and Chen Yun's eyes lit up. The pale yellow dress highlighted her mature and charming figure. She raised her hand and hugged her arm, revealing her delicate collarbone. Her whole aura had improved a lot. Chen Yun sighed, exclaiming, "This wife of mine has more than just a great figure. It's like a mountain range gathering together, and the waves raging."
"This is the outfit. It's not bad. Come, let's change these shoes too."
Qingxue hurriedly tugged at the corner of his shirt and asked in a low voice, "Eh? I thought we agreed to just try on some clothes." Chen Yun took a pair of beige high heels, ignored Qingxue's opinion, pushed her down in the seat, knelt down, took off her worn-out high heels, threw them aside, and gently helped her put on the shoes. The salesperson next to them said enviously, "Not only is your husband good-looking, he's also so attentive, which is really rare."
Qingxue revealed 2 dimples and looked at Chen Yun with even more confused eyes.
"Well, not bad," said Chen Yun, taking a bag from the shelf and handing it to Qingxue. "Take it."
Qingxue obediently took the bag and let Chen Yun do whatever he wanted.
"Very good, not bad, this is the outfit, please check out." After checking out, he looked back at Qingxue and nodded again in satisfaction. "Well, not bad, this is how a goddess should dress." At that moment, the goddess looked as if she had suffered a lot of grievances. Looking at the torn price tag, she hurriedly picked it up, thinking that she could press it back on, already feeling distressed and wanting to cry.
"Let's go to the next store and take a look at Qinglin's clothes."
Qingxue was so anxious that her eyes were red.
Why had this man suddenly become so spendthrift?
They walked into a store and picked out several clothes, handing them to Qinglin.
Then he whispered, "Go and change quickly. Your sister definitely wants to see what you look like in them."
Look, her eyes are red with anticipation. Qinglin glanced at the man in front of her, pursed her lips, and didn't say a word.
How can this man lie without blushing? Is my sister really looking forward to it?
Obviously, she's about to cry because the tag won't stick. But she still took the clothes and went to the fitting room. The two waited for Qingmei at their seats.
At that moment, Chen Yun's phone rang.
He took out his phone and saw a message from Tang Yun.
"Chen Yun, have you settled things with that yellow-faced woman? When are you getting divorced? After you're divorced, I'll give you a chance. Come over and treat me to dinner tonight."
Before Chen Yun could reply, another WeChat message came through.
"If you don't divorce her today, you don't need to look for me in the future." The message was full of threats.
If this had happened in the past, Chen Yun would have started licking the dog's butt. But now, he just sneered and turned off his phone.
Tang Yun, don't worry, we'll settle our score slowly. Chapter 15, Embarrassment in the Fitting Room. At this time, Xingling came out of the fitting room. Chen Yun looked up and immediately brightened up, only then noticing that she had already changed her clothes. A loose-fitting brown sweater covered her thighs, and her long hair had been let loose and hung down her chest in soft waves. Underneath the sweater were a pair of slender legs, and below that, a pair of denim shorts, white sneakers, and black knee-high socks. She looked like the energetic, beautiful girl next door. Chen Yun rarely describes a girl as a beautiful girl, because a beautiful girl not only has to be beautiful, young, but also have a simple, cute, and delicate sense of girlhood, and Qing Lime perfectly fits the description. Although her expression was still cold, it could be seen that the joy in her beautiful eyes kept dancing, and she really liked the outfit. Realizing Chen Yun's gaze, the girl tilted her head, but did not dodge. Chen Yun stood up and walked towards Qing Lime. Are you satisfied with this outfit? Xing Ning continued to look at the clothes on the hanger and did not answer Chen Yun's question. Instead, she said coldly, the boy from the next class at school chased after me, but I didn't agree. Lina found out about it, and she liked that boy, so she started to hate me. She usually targeted me a lot, and that's why that kind of thing happened. Looking at the slender back of the young girl, Chen Yun felt a little uncomfortable. If it weren't for his bad reputation, those students wouldn't have bullied Xing Ning so recklessly. Something similar must have happened more than once. They were also sure that Qingli only had a sister with no money and no power, so they dared to be so arrogant. This also cultivated Qingli's solitary character, wrapping herself in a coat of indifference, and giving off the appearance of a person who kept to herself. I'm afraid she doesn't have a single friend at school. Chen Yun said softly, don't worry, this kind of thing won't happen again in the future. If anyone dares to bully you again, just give me a call and leave it to me to deal with it. The young girl didn't say anything, just nodded heavily. Then, she walked up to the counter and said, check, please. The three of them walked out of the boutique and continued shopping. As they passed in front of a shop, Chen Yun saw a set of clothes that instantly caught his attention. The white top, black skirt, and black stockings made it a very elegant look. If a goddess of Qingshua's caliber wore it, just thinking about it made Chen Yun's mouth water. Wife, come with me and try on that set of clothes. Xingli said from behind. I'm going to the bathroom, I'll meet you guys in a bit. Chen Yun nodded, then pulled Xing Shui into the store. Hello, help me find the outfit in the doorway. My wife wants to try it on. Xing Shui wanted to refuse, but when she saw that the salesperson had already brought the clothes, she had no choice but to go into the fitting room at Chen Yun's urging. After a while, Xing Shui's voice came from the fitting room, honey, are you outside? I'm here, what's wrong? Chen Yun leaned closer to the fitting room door. Xing Shui said shyly in a small voice, come in and help me, the zipper on the back of the dress is stuck. Ha! Coming. Chen Yun froze for a moment, then ducked into the fitting room. Suddenly, he was stunned by the erotic scene in front of him. He saw that Xing Shui had already put on the dress, her snow-white skin exposed, and the zipper at the back stuck with her underwear. Xing Shui waited for a long time but didn't see Chen Yun helping. When she turned around and saw his dumbfounded expression, she immediately blushed and called out, honey. Ha! Oh, I'm sorry, I was distracted. Chen Yun blushed and hurriedly helped her with the zipper. Xing Shui covered her mouth and giggled as she watched Chen Yun's reaction. What was wrong with him these past 2 days? He had seen me like this before, so why was he acting like a crazy man? In order to make it easier for Chen Yun, she deliberately took a step back, and then she felt a change behind her. Chen Yun let out a muffled grunt and hurriedly took a step back, at which point the zipper also came undone. Xing Shui straightened her clothes and turned to look at Chen Yun. What do you think? Does it look good? Yes, it looks good. Looking at the elegant Xing Shui in front of him, he nodded repeatedly, his mouth almost watering. Then let's go out. Xing Shui took his hand and wanted to walk out. However, Chen Yun stood in place, stammering, well, you go out first, I'm not very convenient. What do you mean, not very convenient? Xing Shui didn't react, but when she saw the change in Chen Yun, she immediately blushed and gave a light hiss. Chen Yun was also embarrassed, and he wished he could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. This was too embarrassing. Why don't you go out first? Xing Shui would never leave him here alone. If someone came, they would take him away as a sex maniac. You help me take the things, Xing Shui said timidly, blushing and brushing her hair behind her ears. Chen Yun took the things, not knowing what she wanted to do. Then, he stared at Xing Shui with wide eyes, his whole body going offline,
the CPU completely overheating. 10 minutes later, Xinglan looked around the store in confusion. She clearly remembered entering this store with the two of them, but now they were gone. Just as she was about to call, she heard a loud coughing sound from the fitting room, followed by Qinyun apologizing non-stop.
Sister, are you in there? Cough cough, it's fine, I just choked on some water, I'll be right out.
A few minutes later, Xingxue and Qinyun came out one after the other, both looking a little unnatural.
Sister, are you okay? Xingling asked with some concern. Qinyun giggled foolishly, your sister is fine. She was just hungry and ate some high-calorie protein food.
Xingxue immediately blushed and bashfully lowered her head, pinching herself a little in frustration. Why is this person like this, taking advantage of the situation and still acting like a goody-goody? But I don't want to pinch him, I'm so angry. Although Qingli didn't understand what the two were talking about, it seemed like their relationship had improved, so she didn't pursue it further. After paying the bill, Qinyun bought the sisters 2 sets of clothes, and finally, after Qingshue's strong persuasion, they walked out of the mall.
Honey, let's go home and cook, I'll make your favorite pork belly, okay?
Qingshue's face was filled with a smile.
Okay, let's go home.
The three of them stepped in the afterglow and walked towards home. After dinner, Xingling went back to her room to study, Xingxue washed the dishes in the kitchen, Qinyun washed up, returned to the bedroom, stood by the window, and took out a cigarette to light it. The night was getting darker, and the moonlight seemed to be a hazy silver gauze-like fog, adding a touch of beauty to the scenery outside the window.
Looking at the neon lights in the distance, everything seemed so unreal, yet dazzling. Honey, what are you thinking about? Xingxue didn't know when she had entered, and she hugged Qinyun from behind. Of course I'm thinking about you.
Qinyun turned around and picked Xingxue up in his arms, which made her exclaim in fright and hold on to his neck tightly. Xingling heard the scream from next door and couldn't help but stand up. Her hands tightened into fists, and her breathing stopped for a few beats. But there was no follow-up scream, and she heard her sister's silver bell-like laughter instead. Xingning let out a long breath, let go of her taut heart, and looked at the math problem on the roll, which seemed to be much simpler.
Chapter 16, The Dump Truck Strikes Again. The next morning.
Qinyun was slowly awakened by the sound of birds chirping outside the window. The sunlight was radiant, falling on the windowsill and casting a light golden veil. This feeling was countless times stronger than the sudden cardiac arrest brought on by the alarm clock. He got dressed and walked out of the room, just in time to see Qingshui serving food on the table.
Honey, get up, let's eat.
Qingshue's eyes were full of tenderness, and she looked at Qinyun with happiness in her eyes, like a young wife who had just gotten married.
It seems that last night's in-depth communication was very effective. At least Qingxue now exudes an indescribable confidence.
We must discuss this more in the future.
Qingli, come and eat quickly, you'll be late for school.
Qingli had already finished getting ready and was still wearing the school uniform, sitting at the dining table.
Does your school require you to wear a school uniform? Qinyun asked.
Xingling still had a cold expression on her face and replied indifferently, in the 3rd year of high school, they don't really care anymore, you can wear whatever you want.
That's good, go change your clothes, this school uniform is ugly. No need, I'll still wear the school uniform to school, Xingling replied in a low voice with her head down.
Qinyun put down the chopsticks in his hands and said, be confident, what's wrong with being pretty and having a good figure?
Don't pay attention to those idle words, today we'll wear the new clothes we bought, and I'll accompany you to school in a while.
After hearing his words, a warm current flowed through the hearts of the two sisters. They could tell that what Qinyun had just said was completely the encouragement of an older person, without the slightest other thought.
Xingning looked up, you will accompany me to school?
Yes, things are not finished, and your sister has to go to work, so I will go instead. Then he said with a deliberately stern face, hurry up and go change. Qingshui laughed and agreed, go quickly, that outfit is quite pretty.
Xingli turned around and went into the house to close the door. A few minutes later, she came out wearing that outfit.
Although her expression didn't change, it was obvious that she was in a much better mood.
Which girl wouldn't want to dress up pretty? After dinner, the three of them went out together. Xingxue also put on that new outfit.
When they got downstairs, some residents of the community were taken aback when they saw the two sisters, especially the men, who were so shocked that they couldn't stop smiling. Qinyun's vanity was bursting, leading 2 beautiful women, one young and one old, out the door, which was really impressive.
Honey, I'll go to work first and come back at noon to cook for you. Xingxue got on her electric scooter and left first.
It seems that buying a car needs to be put on the agenda.
It's just not safe to let my wife ride this. The school is not far away, there's plenty of time, and the two walked on the sidewalk. The breeze lifted the hair of the young girl next to him, and Xinglin gently used her hand to pull the hair behind her ear. The warm sun shone down, and Shen Yun was momentarily lost in the sight of her fair-side face. Shen Yun came back to his senses and shook his head with a little smile. At this age, he really was full of energy. However, he didn't seem to be doing too badly himself. Although he had been reborn into this parallel world, it felt like his body was still that of a 22-year-old. Last night had proved that point. Xingling, give me your school bag, said Shen Yun, picking up the school bag from behind. All parents should help their children carry their school bags, he thought to himself. Xingling was taken aback. She didn't expect him to make this request. After hesitating for a moment, she didn't struggle, took off the school bag from her shoulder, and Shen Yun took it. It's heavy. Are all these books for today? Yes, said Xingling, nodding lightly. Feeling that she might have been a little too cold, she continued, senior high school students need a lot of exercise books. That's right. In the year of senior high school, you have to rely on these exercise books and exam papers to improve your score. How was your ranking in the last exam? I didn't do very well. I was ranked 24th in my year group. That's pretty good already. But is there anything bothering you? Suddenly, Chang Ming stopped walking, anger welled up in her eyes, and she glared at Chen Yun like a puffer fish about to explode. No way, did I bore him to death? Could it be because of me? Chen Yun asked tentatively. Xing Ning had wanted to say something several times, but held back. Chen Yun understood. He was afraid that he had done something inhuman again, which had affected Xing Ning's grades. I don't know how to explain it, but it must be my fault. I apologize. Forget it, Xing Ning said, deflated by Qing Yun's words. It's all in the past. After arriving at school, the two went directly to the principal's office, where the homeroom teacher happened to be. The principal got up to greet them, exchanged a few polite words, and got straight to the point. The school's decision is in. Li Na has been expelled, and the other accomplices have all been given demerits and suspended from school. The whole school has been notified and criticized. The whole story is written very clearly, so Qingming won't be wronged. Are you satisfied with the result? Chen Yun nodded. Didn't the boy's family report the case to the police? No, the principal immediately shook his head. How dare they report this to the police? Besides, the parents of those students are willing to pay some compensation. I hope you won't pursue this matter any further by reporting it to the police. If this matter goes through the police, it may constitute slander and leave a criminal record. Humph. Afraid now? What were you thinking when you bullied my Qingming? However, Chen Yun was just saying this and had no intention of reporting the matter to the police and making things absolutely impossible. Let's just leave it at that, then. Thank you, principal and teachers. The principal kept thanking him, as the school did not want to make a big deal out of it. After the matter was settled, the homeroom teacher led them out of the office and walked towards the classroom. The homeroom teacher smiled and said, Xinglin is dressed very nicely today, keep it up in the future. This child really is pleasing to the eye. However, in the future, if you are bullied, you must tell a teacher first. Some students' methods are very extreme. Don't let those people affect your academic performance. It can be seen that this female teacher really likes Qingling, but she is too cold-hearted and rarely communicates with others, always going her own way. Chen Yun laughed and said, Thank you, Teacher Li, for your concern. I was also going to ask Qingling not to live in the dormitory anymore. From now on, we parents will pick her up and drop her off. I'm afraid that the student who was expelled will continue to cause trouble. Upon hearing this, Teacher Li also frowned. So what should we do? Do we need to call the police? It's useless to report this to the police. There's no evidence. Don't worry, Teacher Li, no one will bully my Qingming again. My Qingming? What a strange word. Xingming walked behind the two of them, looking at Chen Yun's back, and an indescribable emotion spread through her heart. Since they were young, her sister and she had been the losers in their family's eyes. If her sister hadn't taken her out of the countryside, they would probably have had a child by now. Xingling, Chen Yun asked, smiling as he looked at his sister-in-law, who was lost in thought behind him, what are you thinking? Can you come home to live in the future? As long as you agree, go back to class and study first, I'll take care of the rest. As Qingling walked into the classroom, there was a burst of gasps. This is Qingling? My god, the school flower's position needs to be changed. It's just a change of clothes, but the whole person looks different, she's so pretty. That aura, she's like a goddess on ice. I feel like I'm in love. Chen Yun was very satisfied with the student's reaction. Then, he ran around the school, helping Qing Ming with the non-resident student registration. After finishing, it was almost 11 o'clock. He went home, and Xing Shui should have gone home to cook dinner by now. Along the way, he hummed a little song as he walked home. When he reached the entrance of the residential area, he saw Xing Shui carrying groceries and trying to cross the street. Chen Yun waved at her. Xing Shui, upon seeing Chen Yun, immediately ran happily towards him. Honey. At this moment, a truck roared from the opposite direction. Chen Yun was stunned. Again? Is this thing going to start working again today? Xing Shui immediately panicked and stood there in shock upon hearing the honking. Without thinking, Chen Yun leaped towards her. Xing Shui managed to dodge the truck, but Chen Yun was not so lucky, and was scraped by the edge and flew a few meters away. Chapter 17, Brothers Gathered. When Chen Yun woke up again, it was already evening. When he opened his eyes, he saw Xing Shui's pretty face. Next to him was a tall, thin man with burgundy hair, wearing a dark pink long-sleeved shirt and black cropped trousers, and a pair of limited edition board shoes on his feet. His facial features looked somewhat handsome, but compared to Chen Yun, he still fell a bit short. Honey, you're awake. I thought, seeing Chen Yun open his eyes, Xing Shui's suppressed tears could no longer be held back, and she hugged him tightly and wept. Chen Yun sat up, stroked her hair gently, and comforted her. Don't worry, I'm fine. Then he looked at the young man and smiled indifferently. How did you get so skinny? Did you take diet pills? The young man's eyebrows lifted slightly. What do you care? Gu Hongfei, are you itching for trouble again? The man heard Chen Yun's rude words and did not refute, just stunned for a moment, and then his eyes brightened. Hey, it's comfortable. Yes, this is the taste. Gu Hongfei grinned, and as he laughed, he burst into tears. Such a big man, in his 30s, did not care at all that he was in a hospital, with people standing nearby, and just cried, sniffling and tearing. My brother is back. My sister-in-law didn't lie to me. Chen Yun didn't try to persuade him, his eyes red with tears, as he watched Gu Hongfei mumble a few words. Gu Hongfei was his childhood friend. After graduating from university, Chen Yun started his own company, which soon thrived thanks to his outstanding abilities. At that time, Gu Hongfei was still a small-time thug, always shouting about fighting and killing, and aspiring to dominate the entire Ningxuan city. But he was betrayed in a transaction and his enemies captured him. After learning about this, Chen Yun took all the company's funds and rescued Gu Hongfei alone. Afterwards, Gu Hongfei had a great awakening and, with Chen Yun's help, also started a business. It was more like he paid for Gu Hongfei to start a company. Later, Chen Yun's personality changed drastically. Under Tang Yun's provocation, he severed the relationship with a few childhood friends and spent all day hanging out with those rogues. During this period, several childhood friends tried to persuade Chen Yun more than once, but he just shouted at them and drove them away. One time, they had a fierce argument and Chen Yun said a lot of hurtful things, completely severing his relationship with those friends. But Gu Hongfei was not giving up. He contacted Xing Shui many times to ask about Chen Yun's situation. This morning, when he asked, Xing Shui told him what had happened in the past 2 days. Gu Hongfei didn't care about his business and flew back directly. Brother, when are you going back to the company? Company? What company? Gu Hongfei flirtatiously shook his hair in front of his eyes. I bought your company, and I've kept the chairman's position for you. Don't worry, although the scale hasn't expanded, it did improve a bit when you were in charge. Hey! Our young Master Chen would ever look at your shitty company? He's a real big shot. An unharmonious voice sounded outside the hospital room. Li Wei, Luo Zhu, you're here, and so is our little Frosty. Xing Shui warmly greeted the family of 3 at the door. Hello, sister-in-law. Luo Zhu was a typical southern girl, with a soft voice, a sweet appearance, and an even sweeter personality. Luo Zhu took the doll-like girl by the hand and walked over to Chen Yun. Frosty, this is the godfather your father always talks about. Say hello. Frosty bowed politely. Hello, godfather. Humph. Who always talks about him? You godfather is better off dead. Fat ass, get out of my way. Chen Yun got up, took Shuang Shuang in his arms, and gave her little face a gentle pinch. Shuang Shuang, is your father good to you? Otherwise, you can just come to our house in the future, okay?
Li Wei was a slightly overweight man, with a slightly round body and face, clean short hair and a pair of gold-rimmed glasses. Hearing Qin Yun's words, Li Wei froze for a few seconds, and angrily cursed out a word, "I'm going to have a smoke, it's too boring." He turned and walked outside. Luo Zhu understood her husband's thoughts and apologetically said, "Brother Chen, Li Wei is just like this, don't mind him." I don't know who is the first one to rush to the police station every time something happens to my brother," Gu Hongfei directly revealed his shortcomings. Chen Yun looked at the little girl in his arms and didn't say anything. Suddenly, he understood why he had been such an idiot all these years and why he had not yet died outside. Whether it was fighting, gambling with a crowd, or some other things, he had never been in jail for more than a day. He always thought that because his name had the word Yun in it, he could turn any situation around. Now that he thought about it, it was thanks to these friends. "Chen Yun's family, the test results are out and you can go through the discharge procedures," the nurse shouted at the door. "I'm coming," Jing Shuai answered. "Honey, I'll be right back." Food stalls. "I'm telling you, Gu Hongfei, this is the kind of place you choose to eat," Li Wei said discontentedly. "I chose it, it has a homely feel," Chen Yun called out with a smile. "Boss, 50 more kebabs and a case of beer." "Okay, coming right up." Gu Hongfei gulped down the beer in his glass, and his tongue got a little big as he spoke. "I mean, brother, when are you going to take over the company? Give me a definite answer." Burp. Chen Yun put down his wine glass, and Xing Xue thoughtfully took a tissue and wiped his mouth. "It's been so many years, how would I still know how to manage a company and be a figurehead like I used to be? No way." Chapter 18, Why Don't We Have Any Children? Li Wei slammed his glass down on the table. "What are we being sentimental about here? You're alive now, so just go back when you're told. What's all this nonsense?" Chen Yun shook his head. "Okay, that's enough on that topic. Right now I just want to spend some time with Xing Xue and take some time off." "Okay, brother, I'll help you out for a while. Call me when you want to come back. Here, drink up." The meal went from early evening to late at night. Chen Yun rubbed his somewhat numb cheeks as he watched the others leave. "Honey, did you drink too much? I'll make you a hangover soup when we get home." Xing Xue held his arm, afraid that he would fall. Chen Yun looked at the time. "Fortunately, there's still enough time." "Anything else?" "Go pick up Qingli. She'll be getting out of school soon. It's late, and I'm not comfortable letting a young girl come home by herself." "Okay." Xing Xue sweetly agreed. The roads were brightly lit at night, with dazzling neon lights. The school was not far away, and the two of them walked slowly forward. Xing Xue really enjoyed this kind of time. Chen Yun whispered, "Wife, was Dad at the hospital the whole afternoon?" Xing Xue's eyes flickered as she said, "Well, I told him you were hurt." Then she took Chen Yun's arm and explained anxiously, "I was really scared at the time, so." Chen Yun patted the back of her hand and comforted her, "You did the right thing. Back then, I was the jerk." Thinking about the sight of that old back outside the ward when he woke up, Chen Yun let out a long sigh. Because of this incident with Tang Yun, his father, Chen Hanlin, had advised him many times. But at that time, how could he listen? After a big fight between father and son, they completely cut off contact and haven't been in touch for all these years. Chen Yun thought about his own actions at the time, and really wished he could slap himself twice. He had lost so much for that woman. Dad and Li Wei and the others, didn't they help a lot? Well, Xing Xue looked at Chen Yun's face. He had said before that he did not want her to contact them. "They really helped you a lot." Xing Xue was afraid that he would misunderstand, so she continued, "But I never asked them for money." "You really are obedient." Chen Yun lovingly hugged Xing Xue's shoulders. "Go see the little old man sometime. I miss him." Xing Xue immediately said happily, "Okay, Dad has been thinking about you too." Before they knew it, they had walked to the park near the school. It was late at night, and there were only a few couples in the park. They found a bench and Chen Yun sat down, hugging Xing Xue. "There's something I've always wanted to ask you." Chen Yun thought about how to phrase it. "Why, do we not have any children?" In the moonlight, he saw panic in Xing Xue's face. She didn't dare make eye contact with Chen Yun and stuttered for words. "No way, could it be that I'm not capable?" This was Chen Yun's first thought. No. Xing Xue shook her head quickly, her eyes darting about as she whispered, "I've been taking the pill all these years after the incident, for fear of really getting pregnant and having a child." Xing Xue saw that in the hospital room, Chen Yun couldn't take his eyes off of Shuang Shuang, and she understood that he really liked children. If they had a child, perhaps he would have changed his mind long ago. She bit her lip with some remorse.
Mm.
The sudden kiss scared Qingxue so much that she almost screamed, her hands frozen in the air. After an unknown period of time, their lips parted. Qingxue blushed as she looked around, relieved to see that there was no one around.
You did the right thing. It's true that you can't have children in that environment. Chen Yun's fingers gently ran through Qingxue's hair. Can we have one in the future? No, it's best to have 2, or even 3.
Qingxue looked down at the nearby demon's claw, her eyes unfocused.
She leaned against the warm chest and said happily, well, whatever you want.
Chen Yun heard the double meaning in her words and, as if he had received imperial edict, became even more unrestrained and had a great time. The two were affectionate for a while longer, and when it was almost time, Qingxue's whole body was limp on Chen Yun's body, allowing him to embrace her as they walked out of the park and went to the school gate to wait for Qingli.
With the school bell ringing, the school gate became noisy.
Xing Ning walked out of school alone, looking around at the parents leading their children home, and glanced at them with some envy before walking on with her head down.
Xing Ning.
Hearing a familiar voice, she looked up.
Sister, why are you here so late?
Xing Ning's heart warmed. Someone still cared about her. When she saw Chen Yun next to Qing Shui, he was still carrying a takeaway bag.
Chen Yun waved the bag in his hand. Barbecue, still hot, go home for dinner.
Then, he took the heavy school bag off Xing Ning's shoulders. Oh, she said softly, her throat swallowing involuntarily. Chen Yun saw Xing Ning's reaction and smiled. It seemed that this girl was very keen on food, and he had discovered this the last time they had hot pot. While chatting with Qing Shui, he learned the reason. They were both born in a small mountain village. Their family valued boys over girls, so it goes without saying that they could not enjoy any delicacies. It was lucky that Qing Shui managed to escape from there through her own efforts. When Qingling was in junior high school, she heard that her family no longer wanted her to go to school, so Qing Shui took her out of that fire pit. Along the way, the two sisters laughed and joked, as if only in front of her sister could Qingling take off that cold mask and communicate normally.
Back at home, Chen Yun put the barbecue in the microwave for a few minutes to heat it up.
The meat was sizzling, the oil from the barbecue bubbling, and there was some ground chili and cumin on top. Qing Shui brought another bowl of rice over and placed it in front of her younger sister. It's all yours, eat.
Mm.
Then, throughout the meal, Qing Shui did not say a word. She held the bowl in one hand and the kebab in the other, sat upright, looked pious, and ate with all her heart.
Seeing this, Chen Yun couldn't help but swallow. This girl had the talent to be a food blogger.
Not only was she beautiful, but she also looked appetizing, which made you want to eat. After eating the last kebab, she looked up and noticed that the two of them had been staring at her, and a blush appeared on her fair face. She lowered her head shyly, I'm full. Then, she turned her head, grabbed her school bag and ran back to her bedroom.
Wait.
Qing Shui followed her and walked into the bedroom, where the two sisters went off to whisper.
When she came out, she saw Chen Yun washing the dishes in the kitchen. How can you do this?
Qing Shui stamped her foot coquettishly, and coupled with her goddess-like appearance, the killing power was devastating.
Chapter 19, Tang Yun's phone call. The next morning,
Qing Shui got up early to make breakfast and was frying an egg in a pan.
The sound of the oil sizzling seemed to wake up the whole morning. Chen Yun watched as a whole fried egg flipped over, and the image of himself flipping it over last night came back to him. That scene, it really was nostalgic. Dinner is ready.
Qingling, who was still worried about a math problem on the exercise book, immediately stood up and helped clear the table when she heard her sister's words.
Honey, you go to work in a while, I'll take Qingling to school.
No need, Qingling said with her head bowed. Qing Shui agreed, it's too much trouble, she can go by herself. Chen Yun shook his head, I'm afraid her classmates who were punished will cause trouble.
I'm fine, I'll go out for a walk after dropping her off. Upon hearing this, Qing Shui also nodded worriedly.
At Chen Yun's urging, Qing Shui went to work, looking back every step of the way.
Let's go too. Give me your school bag.
Qingning took off her school bag and placed it in Chen Yun's hands, whispering, hey, thanks.
What thanks? This is what I should do. Chen Yun suddenly stopped. In his tracks. What do you mean, hey? Didn't you just call me brother-in-law?
Qingling tilted her head to one side, her hair fluttering in the wind, as if she was reluctant to say, oh, brother-in-law.
Yes, that's a good boy.
Chen Yun reached out to give Qingling a couple of taps on the head, but suddenly realized that this action seemed likely to be misunderstood, so he withdrew his hand.
Soon, the two arrived at school.
Xingling took the school bag, her face still cold and indifferent, and turned to leave. Chen Yun waved at her back and said softly, "I'll pick you up tonight." The voice was not loud, but it was clear.
Chen Yun turned around and went home.
After arriving home, he took off his shirt, and his phone rang.
Qing Shui is really clingy.
It's only been a short time since they parted, and she's calling again. Chen Yun smiled as he picked up the phone, his expression frozen, and an indescribable feeling welled up in his heart. The caller ID, Tang Yun. When he answered the phone, a shout came from the other end, so loud that Chen Yun took the phone away from his ear.
Chen Yun, what's wrong with you? Haven't you gotten a divorce yet?
A series of questions made Chen Yun freeze for a few seconds, and an indescribable feeling of disgust spread through his heart.
With great difficulty, he said indifferently, I can't get a divorce right now. Chen Yun, you've gone crazy, haven't you? How dare you talk to me like that?
You have to divorce her today, or you don't need to come to me anymore. In the past, these words were powerful enough to make Chen Yun do whatever she said.
Qing Shui is still useful.
She will soon receive a sum of money that is more than enough to support us for the rest of our lives. Upon hearing this, Tang Yun immediately sat up from the bed in the hotel, her excited nightgown straps falling from her collarbone, revealing half a snow-white orb.
Baby, are you serious?
Her voice was much lower and had a bit more charm.
Chen Yun shivered. This accent was too fake, and it was really not even a little bit close to Qing Shui's kind of beautiful voice.
Well, I'm still investigating the details, and I'll talk to you about it in detail once I confirm the news.
Okay, baby, I'll do whatever you say, I'm counting on you for the rest of my life.
Chen Yun gripped the hammer in his hand with all his strength, took a deep breath, and only then resisted the urge to scold him in the past.
Chapter 20, A Considerate Wife. Well, Qing Shui will be back soon, and it would be troublesome if she saw it.
We haven't been in touch recently, so wait for my news. Once I get the money, I'll sell her.
Well, dear, I'll do whatever you say, you're the best.
Chen Yun hung up the phone immediately, really not wanting to hear that affected voice anymore. It was easy to get sick of it.
Phew.
Exhaling a breath, the first step of the plan was a success. It seems that Tang Yun believed it.
That's right, when have I ever lied to her over the years? To her, I'm just an obedient dog.
This has saved a lot of trouble, and all that remains is for her to step into the trap step by step. For the time being, there is no need to worry about money, and there is enough for the three of them. It was almost noon when Qing Shui entered the house with a large pile of vegetables and several delivery boxes, and saw the shocking scene. The sun was shining at this time, and the breeze in June lifted the curtains.
Outside the window was the hustle and bustle of the city. She saw Chen Yun lying on the ground doing push-ups. But when did he get abs? Does he go to the gym while he's out fooling around?
It's possible, after all, every time he comes back to bed, she's afraid to look at him, doing everything with her eyes closed, hoping it will be over soon. Now it seems that this body is quite good, coupled with that handsome face, it doesn't look like a middle-aged man in his 30s at all. She had no idea that Chen Yun had been reborn and brought back his body from his 20s, so of course he didn't look like an uncle.
Ghoul. Qing Shui couldn't help but swallow.
It seemed that her resistance to him had been weakening over the past 2 days. But it didn't matter, he was her husband after all, so she could look at him however she liked. She put down the things in her hands gently, took a towel, and quietly walked behind Chen Yun.
The towel caressed his back, wiping away the sweat. Chen Yun was still thinking about his plan and hadn't noticed Qing Shui's return. Feeling the tenderness on his back, he turned around and said, "You're back. Give me a second, I'll be done in a minute."
Qing Shui's voice was soft and sweet as she said, "Honey, you go ahead and I'll wipe your sweat." After exercising, Qing Shui said softly, "Go take a shower, I'll give you a surprise as a reward for being tired all day." Upon hearing the reward, Chen Yun's eyes lit up and he quickly dashed into the bathroom.
After a while, he came out wearing just a pair of large underpants. He couldn't wait and exclaimed, "What reward? I've already."
He was so stunned by the stunning beauty standing in the bedroom doorway that he couldn't take his eyes off her. This reward was really too good. Qing Shui was wearing the purple dress from Pandora's box, with one shoulder strap having slipped down to reveal her beautiful collarbone and half of her snow-white skin. She also had a cat-shaped hairband on her head, and her two long, beautiful, and illegal legs were clad in black stockings. Looking at the stunned Chen Yun, Qing Shui blushed and shouted, "Honey." This cry of love made Chen Yun's soul go missing. With heavy breathing, he couldn't wait to pick up Qing Shui and walk towards the bedroom. Qing Shui blushed and nestled in Chen Yun's arms. Her skin was pale pink, Her body couldn't help but tremble a few times, her eyes were blurred, and even misty. Chapter 21 Qinglime in danger. The afterglow of the sunset dyed the room orange through the bedroom window, and the curtains fluttered afterwards, giving people an indescribable sense of peace. Qing Shui's eyelashes twitched slightly, and she slowly opened her eyes to see a handsome face looking at her tenderly, with a smile in his eyes. She shrank into his arms again, and her fingers traced over his chest.
Husband, you're awake. What time is it? Qing Shui asked lazily. Almost 5 o'clock. Ah. It's so late. I promised to make you lunch, but.
Thinking back to the afternoon's craziness, she gave Chen Yun a shy glare, full of charm. Chen Yun slowly withdrew his arm, which had gone numb from being pressed, and teased, "You're the one who asked for it."
Oh, you're still saying that? Honey, what happened to your hand? Did I press it until it went numb?
Seeing that Chen Yun's arm was unnaturally red from being pressed, and there were traces of hair on it,
she rubbed it tenderly. Why didn't you take it away? It's all bruised.
It's fine, I was afraid of waking you up, he said, and then he hugged Qing Shui into his arms again. Qing Shui didn't struggle, but instead cuddled up to him. She was moved, and now she really liked Chen Yun. She could tell that his tenderness wasn't fake, and that his eyes were full of her. However, this also made her more afraid of gaining and then losing, and that one day he would return to his old self. So now she just wanted to satisfy all of Chen Yun's demands and keep him firmly by her side.
Honey, I'm going to go cook dinner. Xingling will be back soon.
You're home early today, I'll go pick her up. I forgot to tell you, day students don't have to attend evening classes, and they usually come home earlier.
Qing Shui looked apologetically at Chen Yun.
Chen Yun patted her head gently twice and said with a smile, "Well, you cook, I'm going out, I should still have time." Xingling stood at the school gate, looking at the crowd around her gradually dwindle. A little disappointed, she looked around again, but didn't see the figure that annoyed her.
She kicked the stone under her foot, and a hint of annoyance appeared on her pretty face. Why was she waiting for him? Couldn't she just go home? She knew the way home.
The sun was setting, the night was getting darker, and a few sparrows fell on the sides of the silent road, bending the branches. Xingling walked forward at a leisurely pace, occasionally looking in other directions, as if she was looking for something. When he passed the corner of the park, several people suddenly jumped out from the roadside. The leader was Li Na, who gave him an unfriendly smile. Seeing this, Xing Ming turned and ran, but it was too late. Standing behind him was a yellow-haired guy, who was drooling at the sight of Qing Ming's impressive figure and pretty face.
Li Na, is this what you call a burnt good?
It's really the best, huh? Today I'm going to have a taste. The yellow-haired guy rubbed his hands together, his eyes showing an uncontrollable lust. Qing Ning slowly backed away, looking around with her peripheral vision, looking for a chance to get herself out of trouble. But she was disappointed. This was the most remote part of the park, and no one was passing by at all.
Bitch, still trying to run? You got me expelled from school, and you still want to go to school peacefully? Dream on. Li Na walked up to Qing Ning and slapped her, continuing to scold, "If it wasn't for your brother-in-law picking you up every day, you would have been ruined long ago, you bitch. Today you will know the consequences of messing with me."
She shouted at Huang Mao, "Drag her into the warehouse over there, strip her naked, and play with her however you like. I'll record it for you, and if you dare to call the police, I'll spread the video."
Huang Mao laughed heartily.
This was obviously not the first time he had done something like this, but he had never seen such an extraordinary chick before, and he couldn't wait any longer. Sheng Ming struggled nonstop, swinging her school bag around, but she was no match for these people, and she was quickly subdued. She was left to be dragged by several people towards the abandoned warehouse.
Chapter 22 Arrogant Parents.
Besides the pain, there was only abyssal fear left in their bodies. At this moment, a figure flashed through their minds, the scumbag who called himself their parent.
But where was he? Why hadn't he come to save them yet?
Qing Ming's mental state was close to the brink of collapse under the high pressure of fear and despair.
Sigh.
A deep sigh attracted the attention of everyone.
I just don't understand why there are always people looking for death.
Xing Ning looked at that figure and for the first time felt an overwhelming sense of familiarity, and the urge to cry came over her.
Let the person go.
Shen Yun held a cell phone in one hand and a tree branch as thick as an arm in the other. Huang Mao was taken aback, and Sheng Ning took the opportunity to break free, ran to Chen Yun's side, and tightly grasped his clothes. Her body was still shaking uncontrollably, and she was truly terrified this time. When Lina and the others saw Chen Yun, their faces changed. They didn't expect him to be able to come at this time. Huang Mao lit a cigarette and arrogantly cursed, "You're her brother-in-law, so I'm telling you to get lost and mind your own business. If you get yourself killed, it won't be worth it." Shen Yun ignored him and turned to Qing Ning. Her tearful eyes were red and her fair face was no longer as cold as it had been before. All that was left was fear. Her hair was messy, her face had a bruise, and she was covered in dust, looking miserable. He asked with a heart full of pain, "Xingling, are you okay? It's all my fault for being late." "No. It's fine, let's just go." All she wanted now was to leave this place of trouble. This group of people had already left a big psychological shadow on her. "Go? What are you thinking? If you don't stay and play with me today, don't even think about walking out alive," Huang Mao yelled. Shen Yun laughed in anger, and there was a little more sinister look in his eyes. "I don't want to go either. The police should be here soon." Hearing the word police, the people on the other side panicked, and they looked like they wanted to back away. "I advise you not to try to run, I'm recording this, and it'll be quite a hassle to catch you again." Shen Yun's voice was cold, and he looked at them indifferently. Just as Li Na and the others were hesitating, the police arrived. In the lobby of the police station, Xing Shui received a call from Chen Yun, and when she heard that her younger sister had been bullied, she was so scared that she ran all the way to the police station. She took Qingling's hand and, with trembling hands, patted the dust off her. She asked about what had happened and, when she heard that she had almost been bullied, glared at the few people crouching opposite and was too angry to speak. The few people didn't think it was a big deal, and when Huang Mao saw Qing Shui come in, lust shone in his eyes as he kept scanning her body, smiling playfully. All of this was seen by Chen Yun, who raised the corner of his mouth and his smile grew even wider. "Honey, what are we going to do about the police?" "We'll wait until the parents of those kids come. The police station wants the two sides to talk first." Xing Shui immediately shook her head and said angrily, "No, I won't accept a private settlement. They must go to jail. If it weren't for you, Xingling would have been raped already. With her temperament, how could she have survived? They are committing murder. It's not as serious as you say. It's just kids fighting. You're just trying to extort money." An obese middle-aged man walked into the police station, wearing an expensive suit and a cigar in his mouth, with an arrogant attitude. Li Na saw the person coming and immediately cried out in distress, "Dad, why are you only here? Ouch, my dear daughter, are you hurt? Get up quickly, just leave the rest to Dad." Li Na glanced at Xing Ning in the corner of her eye, tilted her head slightly, with a smile on her lips, and disdainfully gave her the middle finger. It really is true that what kind of child is raised by what kind of family. Seeing this father and daughter, Chen Yun already had some plans in mind. Li Na's father walked up to Chen Yun. "You must be Chen Yun, the one who got my daughter expelled from school, right? Not bad, you got my daughter into trouble again this time." Hearing this, Xing Shui became emotional. "What kind of attitude is this? It's my sister who was clearly the one who got hurt. Shouldn't you apologize now?" Chen Yun looked at Xing Shui with some surprise. She was gentle and docile in front of him, like a little lamb, but when she got angry, she was quite intimidating. "Come on, I've seen a lot of people like you. Just tell me how much you want," the fat man said impatiently. Xing Shui was so angry that her body trembled a little. She didn't know what to say for a moment. The fat man turned his head and looked at Chen Yun, snickering, "Even if you go through legal proceedings, you won't get any advantage. Li Na is still 2 months short of adulthood, and your child only suffered minor injuries, nothing substantial. In the end, it will just cost you money." Xing Shui didn't believe what he said, and immediately looked at the policeman in the hall. "Is what he said true?" The policeman had a stern face, and he couldn't stand the other person's arrogant attitude either, but he still helplessly nodded. "If you insist on going through legal proceedings, we will investigate," and the final result, he didn't continue, but the meaning was clear. Xing Shui looked at Chen Yun, her eyes full of helplessness and confusion. There was even a layer of moisture in her eyes. She had no idea what to do anymore. Her younger sister had almost been raped, and she could do nothing about it. Xing Shui felt as if her heart was being torn apart by 1,000 knives. The fat man leaned closer to Chen Yun and laughed. "I'm saying, my friend, that little girl still has to go to school, right? If you guys keep insisting, even if Li Na is detained for a few days, she'll definitely be in a bad mood when she gets out, and then, hee." The threat was full of meaning, and Xing Shui also heard what he said. She looked at Qingling next to her with a pale face, and her eyes revealed desolation and helplessness.
Is this the difference between the rich and the poor? From beginning to end, Chen Yun did not say a word, just coldly looking at the man across from him. Suddenly, he clapped his hands and laughed lowly. Pop, he pop, he pop, the sound echoed through the police station, and there was a moment of silence. Not bad, very good, I think you're right. Chen Yun's smile grew even wider, and he even patted the fat man on the shoulder, as if they were friends who hadn't seen each other in years. He turned to the police officer and said, "Let's just forget about this, it's just kids fighting, we won't pursue it." The policeman wanted to say something else, but Chen Yun had already pulled Qing Shui towards the door without any hesitation. Li Na and the others saw that the matter had been settled like this, and Chen Yun didn't even dare to ask for the money, which made him even more arrogant. What is this? This is the end of it? What a coward. I also want to hang out with that little girl. She really is heart-stopping. Those long legs of hers are something I could play with for a year. Great, even if you go see her every day, I don't think the family will dare say anything. Chapter 23 Chen Yun's Tactics. Quiet. The police officer frowned, unable to bear to watch what these people were doing, and shouted in dissatisfaction. He looked at the back of Chen Yun's head and frowned slightly. He had seen a lot of this kind of thing, and every parent who came in was emotional, wanting to bring these evil people to justice. But someone like Chen Yun was something he had never seen before. Since entering the police station, he had been very calm and rarely spoke, as if he already knew the outcome of this matter and was just going through the motions of being here. This matter should not end like this. Along the way, Chen Yun did not say a word, but just went to the pharmacy and bought some trauma medicine. The two sisters walked home with blank expressions, not knowing what to think. After returning home, Chen Yun took Qing Shui's hand and said softly, "Don't think so much, leave everything to me, don't worry, go cook first, Xingling is probably hungry." Qing Shui nodded helplessly, taking it all as just excuses from Chen Yun. After all, what could be done in a situation like this? She could only go pick up Xingyi every day, hoping that those scumbags would stop harassing her. She just wanted to get through her senior year of high school and go to college far away from here. Qing Shui sighed, turned around and went to the kitchen. After a while, the old exhaust fan hummed. Xingling looked listlessly at the stained floor, her expressionless pretty face indifferent, her eyes staring blankly at a gap in the floor, wondering what she was thinking. Chen Yun took iodine and cotton swabs, sat opposite Xingling. Took her arm, and carefully applied it. Desperate? Are you very unwilling? Why didn't those scumbags get the punishment they deserved? Chen Yun's voice was not loud, and he bowed his head to carefully treat her wound. Xingling didn't say a word, letting Chen Yun do whatever he wanted, like a doll that had lost its soul. When Chen Yun held the swelling spray against her fair and pretty face, their eyes met. All of this happened because of me, I'm just a jinx, wherever I go, I bring misfortune, Xingling whispered, looking at Chen Yun's eyes gradually turning red. Her pitiful appearance made people feel distressed just by looking at her. Close your eyes, Chen Yun sprayed medicine on the bruise and then smeared it with a cotton swab. Very puzzled why I didn't hold those people responsible, right? I guess the little bit of goodwill I had left in your heart has disappeared. You must have cursed in your heart, the scum. Seeing that there were rich people on the other side, he was scared and ran away in a panic. Xing Ming looked at Chen Yun's expression, which seemed to be smiling but not really, and tilted her head slightly. She really did think this, and he had said it himself, my own Xing Ming. Why did he just run away in the face of those people? Even if he had just hung on a little longer and said something harsh, he didn't. But she soon let go. How could she expect Chen Yun to do that? She was just a sister-in-law with no blood ties. Just last week, he was looking at her with desire in his eyes. Maybe he was more interested in her body. They were just the same. Thinking about this, Xingling gave a sad smile. This society really has no place for her, even if there is just enough room for her to survive. But there isn't. The only glimmer of light in her life gradually faded away with the incident at the police station. Chen Yun checked the wounds again to make sure he hadn't missed any, and nodded with satisfaction. He reached out and placed his hand on Xingling's chin, slightly forcing her to look at him with her vacant eyes. He said seriously, "Xingling, you are not some kind of jinx. You are my family, along with your sister. No matter what happens, that will never change. I'm still waiting for you to get into a famous university, so that you can become the topic of conversation for me in the future. Whenever I meet someone, I can say, hey, this is my daughter Xingling. Just think of that image. Gee, that's..." A flash of light appeared in Xingling's eyes, as if she had seen that image in the near future. A complex expression appeared on her pretty face. Silly girl, none of this is your fault. It's just the way the world is. Only if you become capable yourself will you not be eliminated by society. In the future, those people won't bother you anymore. Don't worry, I'll take care of everything. Hearing Chen Yun's gentle words, Qing Ming could no longer hold back. First, her eyes filled with mist, then they came together, crystal clear, flowing over the pale iceberg and dripping onto Chen Yun's arm. The iceberg melted along with it, and apart from indifference, there were finally other expressions on her pretty face. Cry out all the grievances you have suffered over the years. In the future, I and your sister will help you shoulder everything, so don't worry. Wawak Chen Yun, Qing Ning pounced over and hugged his neck, just like a child who has suffered a great injustice and has found his father. Why are you still calling me by my name? Call me brother-in-law. Chen Yun patted Qing Ming's back of the head gently, comforting the young heart that had never relied on others. You're not that scum, I know it, you're Chen Yun. Chen Yun's hand froze in the air, while the other hand nervously clenched into a fist. Qing Ming, what are you talking about? I am your brother-in-law. Warm drops fell on his neck. Qing Ning leaned over his ear and whimpered, You're not, woof woof, I can feel it. Ha, Chen Yun laughed awkwardly, glancing into the kitchen. Qing Shui was still busy and wasn't looking this way. You're really messing around, but why? Qing Ning didn't get up, resting her chin on his shoulder, and whispered, You look at me differently, but that's good, will you always be like this? Of course, it won't change. That's good, Qing Ning nodded vigorously, and her whimpering gradually subsided, finally turning into sobs. Don't worry, no matter who you are, I won't tell my sister. At this time, Chen Yun's phone rang. Qing Ning, like a frightened little rabbit, hastily got up. Thinking about how embarrassed she had just been, she blushed for a moment and looked down, not knowing what to do. Hey, why did it take so long to answer the phone? Chen Yun directly pressed the answer button. Chen Yun, did you have another fit and get arrested? Li Wei roared over the phone. Put Luo Zhu on the phone. It's urgent. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line, and Li Wei could hear the anger in Chen Yun's voice. Are you okay? Why are you looking for my Zhu? Li Wei's voice gradually decreased. Well, something happened. Chen Yun got up and went into the bedroom. Chen Yun let out a smoke ring outside the window, that's what happened. Oh, Chen, I understand, the voice on the other end of the line said softly, but suddenly its tone turned cold. You like to bully people, I'll show them what real bullying is. Well, I'll leave it to you then, that yellow-haired. Don't worry, Chen Ge, I'll make him regret being born. 2 days, no, 1 day is enough. Wait for my news. Luo Zhu's voice returned to its usual sweet and soft tone, which was very soothing to the ear. Okay, give the phone to Fatso. I'll talk to him about the rest. Go ahead, I'm listening. Give me a definite answer about how you want to play. Li Wei could no longer hold back his anger. How dare they bully his family? They must really be tired of living. The photo has been sent to your phone, it's this person, you decide what to do. I know, damn it, it makes me so angry, I'm going to find this son of a bitch's information now. The phone hung up, Chen Yun took a last drag of his cigarette, let out a heavy breath, tilted his head and looked at the stars in the distance. Indeed, to deal with these people, you still have to rely on your own means. At some point, 2 beautiful figures, one big and one small, appeared at the door, peering at Chen Yun at the window. Qing Xue's eyes were full of peace of mind, happiness, and admiration. However, Qingling was staring at him blankly, her eyes full of mixed emotions. The familiar voice resounded in her head again, My Qingling. Those words kept echoing in her ears. It turned out that everything he said was true. Just leave everything to him, and he will take care of it. The girl's mixed emotions slowly turned into admiration. It really felt good to have someone to lean on. Chapter 24 and Natural Beauty. When Chen Yun turned around, he saw the two of them smiling softly and said, When did you two come? Honey, Cheng Shui flung herself into his arms, her voice choking with emotion, Thank you, for worrying about Qingli. Chen Yun patted her on the back, reassuring her, Isn't it my job to take care of you? Why are you being so formal? Cheng Shui wrapped her arms around his neck and didn't let go, giving him a heavy kiss on the cheek. Honey, you're so good. Looking at Qing Shui's beautiful face, Chen Yun finally understood what it meant to be naturally charming. Qing Shui was just such a woman. Even if she didn't do anything and just stood there, every glance, every smile, and even every movement was full of charm. Hey, that. Qingling, go clean up the dishes, I'm hungry. Qingling was taken aback. She didn't know why she was suddenly so hungry, but she didn't suspect anything and went out to work. Little firecracker, you're doing this on purpose to make me look bad, Chen Yun said viciously. Hearing this, Xingshua's eyes became unfocused, an unnatural blush appeared on her cheeks, and her voice was flirtatious. Yes, I'm your little firecracker, I did it on purpose, don't you like it? Looking at the flirtatious Xingshua, Chen Yun quickly raised his hands in surrender. Honey, I'm sorry, don't worry about where I went wrong, I just did, let's go eat first. Xingshua saw Chen Yun's blushing face, and she giggled before getting up. She really liked this husband of hers, and always felt like a young puppy that had just been deflowered, unable to resist teasing him every time. Seeing Xingshua go out, Chen Yun let out a breath, trying hard to calm himself down. If Li Mei saw him in this disheveled state, where would the dignity of the brother-in-law be? My brother-in-law, isn't he hungry? Oh, he probably doesn't want to eat this, Xingshua blushed as she thought about the scene just now. She really was getting more and more bold. Xingni didn't understand, but their relationship was getting better and better. She also smiled from the bottom of her heart. This family finally had the appearance of a family. After a while, Chen Yun came out. He saw the two sisters whispering to each other, neither of them had moved their chopsticks, and they were still waiting for him. Ahem, let's eat. Well, honey, try this, is it delicious? Xingshua busied herself serving food to Chen Yun. Xingling went to the kitchen and brought a bottle of white wine, placing it in front of Chen Yun. Here. This bottle of wine was still hidden by her. In the past, after Chen Yun drank, he would act crazy, and the sisters were afraid of his appearance. Now, it seems that they are not afraid anymore. It's okay, have some, I'm happy today. Xingshua took the wineglass and poured it full for him. Then she asked, I know a bit about Li Wei's family, they're quite wealthy. His grandfather started from scratch, and Li Wei is considered a second-generation rich kid. But why did you go to Luo Zhu first? She seems weak and gentle, and she's afraid to speak loudly. Weak and gentle? Ha ha. Chen Yun took the wineglass and took a sip. Luo Zhu would be so happy to hear such a compliment. Ah, isn't that so? Of course not. Luo Zhu and I went to the same university, but she was a year younger than me. I was the one who set her up with Li Wei. I didn't find out about her family background until later, and I was shocked. It was pretty much the same expression you're making now. Chen Yun took a bite of his food and continued, that girl who looked like she could be blown over by the wind, actually. Gee, really, I can't tell you, you can ask her yourself in the future, but you can trust her with this matter, none of those people will get away, they dared to bully my Qingming, hee. Xingshui didn't ask anymore, it was better not to know these things, she had Chen Yun now anyway. Then why did you call the police? Qingmei asked. Give them a chance. If the parents come and show an attitude, the matter will be forgotten. But, some people are not worthy of being human. At this point, Chen Yun's tone became a little heavier. The consequences of this kind of bullying incident are terrible. If I hadn't stopped it in time, Qingmei's second half of her life would have been ruined. Even if I reported it to the police afterwards and brought them to justice, those people would not have the slightest remorse. Maybe Qingmei will become their talking point in the future. Okay, let's eat. Don't let those scumbags affect our mood. Xingshue saw that Chen Yun's face wasn't looking too good, so she hurriedly advised him. Yes, let's eat. Your wife's cooking is really getting better and better. Chen Yun took a big bite of the food and praised it. By the way, you and Xingni should both take tomorrow off. I'll take you out for some fun. Xingni still had a bruise on her face, and going to school would be a hassle, so she might as well just take the day off. Really, honey, you're so nice. Seeing Xingxuat about to pounce again, Chen Yun hurriedly gestured to show that Xingni was still nearby. Xingni cooperated perfectly, bowing her head to eat, her expression pious, as if she were about to hang a sign around her neck saying, "You can't see me, I'm just a heartless dry rice machine." The next morning, Chen Yun rubbed his sore back a few times. Recalling last night's scene, he shook his head and smiled wryly. Xing Shui is really getting crazier and crazier, coming up with all kinds of tricks. But he really likes it. Looks like he needs to find some time to work out. Walking out of the bedroom, he saw Qing Shui applying makeup in front of the mirror. Usually, she is too busy going to work to put on makeup, and she always keeps her face simple and natural, but it doesn't affect her naturally beautiful appearance. And she doesn't have much money to buy cosmetics, so the bottles and jars on the table were bought by Qin Yun a few days ago. She got up early today to go out with her husband and put a lot of thought into it. Looking at Qing Xue's outfit, he was momentarily stunned. The tight-fitting black halter-neck tank top showed off her extremely attractive collarbone,
and the modestly length skirt showed off her long legs to the fullest. A cherry-red mouth, a willowy waist, slender but not too thin. Then he remembered a popular saying on the internet: some people are naturally charming, not because of their skills. Hubby, Xing Shuai came up to him and rubbed her face against his arm. Why are you staring at me like that? Chen Yun then reacted, and said the name of a plant. You flirtatious little demon. Chen Yun picked Xing Shuai up. Xing Shuai didn't struggle, and giggled as she wrapped her arms around Chen Yun's neck. She didn't care about the risk of ruining her makeup, and instead kissed him on the cheek. Xing Shuai had thought it through very clearly: whether it was clothes or makeup, it was all for Chen Yun, as long as he liked it. Now that the goal had been achieved, did it matter? Lime left the bedroom, her eyes still sleepy. She had heard someone talking earlier, but now it had all stopped. Maybe they were confused after waking up. They hadn't gotten up yet, so they continued to sleep for a while. Meanwhile, in an abandoned warehouse somewhere in the suburbs, Huang Mao led Lina and the others inside and said, "Today I'll introduce you to my boss. Don't say anything for a while, do you hear?" Chapter 25 Oceanarium. On the second floor of the warehouse, Luo Zhu compared the photos on her phone one by one. Very good, not a single one missing. Go ahead, be careful, take a good video. Never mind, I'll do it myself, Brother Chen is waiting. Luo Zhu's voice was still gentle, but the several black-clad men behind her were all silent. They all remembered the name Brother Chen in their hearts, not knowing who this holy person was that could make Luo Zhu come personally. A middle-aged man walked up to Luo Zhu and bowed, saying, "My lady, I'll do it, so you don't get your eyes dirty." Then, okay, I'll go wait in the car. Luo Zhu smiled, her charming smile showing the sweetness of a southern woman, and she turned and walked downstairs. Inside a mansion, a fat middle-aged man was eating breakfast when a sudden shrill ringtone sounded. He frowned in dissatisfaction. Who could be calling so early? It couldn't be his daughter getting into trouble again, could it? Never mind, let her play around for a few more days, then find a private school to send her to and get a fake diploma. After answering the phone, the secretary's voice could be heard shouting over the line. "Boss, there's been an accident." "What the hell are you shouting about? You scared the shit out of me." "What is it?" "Boss, most of the people we work with have terminated their contracts, we're in trouble this time." The obese middle-aged man suddenly stood up, his face changing drastically. The company was now in an upward trend, and those partners had all signed contracts, so how could they just cancel them? What's going on? Aren't they afraid of compensation for breach of contract? The secretary said with a sad face, "Boss, not only that, many suppliers have also made it clear that they will no longer deliver to us. It seems that we have been isolated by Ningxuan City." The middle-aged man was stunned, and his phone fell to the ground. "Hubby, it's all your fault, I think Xingli is already up." Xing Shuai finished getting dressed and gently chided him. Chen Yun also didn't say anything, just staring at Xing Shuai's graceful figure and sitting by the bedside, smiling foolishly. "Ouch, my young master, why are you still in a daze? Here, let me help you get dressed." Although she scolded him, her eyes were full of happiness. She enjoyed Chen Yun's aggressive gaze, which made her feel a lot more confident. When they came out, Qingling was doing exercises in an exercise book. Seeing how Qingling was dressed, Chen Yun nodded secretly. This sister-in-law is as beautiful as Xing Shuai, just like real sisters, both goddesses of the same caliber. She was wearing a light beige short-sleeved jacket, a white short-sleeved shirt, and a pleated, lacy, plain-colored skirt. She didn't wear any makeup, giving her the image of the little girl next door. She was so pure that she was beyond words, and her killing power over men was no worse than a first-tier celebrity. "Honey, where are we going?" "First, let's go eat, then to the aquarium." "I've already made a plan." "Wow, the aquarium, Xingxi and I have never been." Xing Shuai excitedly hugged Qinyun's neck, then asked with some concern, "This is going to cost a lot of money, isn't it?" "Don't worry about money, we have enough for our expenses now, let's go." The three of them went out and ate a few buns, then took a taxi to the aquarium. During this time, Xing Shuai kept hugging Chen Yun, the power of the huge slime firmly restraining his arms. While he could feel the warmth, a nice smell of hair also drifted into his nose. After checking in, they entered the aquarium. This aquarium is a must-visit tourist attraction in the city, so even on weekdays, it is already very crowded, even if it is not a long holiday. Perhaps because there were so many people around, Chen Yun's hand, which had been holding Xing Shuai's hand, had changed to holding her waist, and he used his tall body to squeeze out a space for the two of them in the crowded flow of people. Xing Shuai was lying in his arms, enjoying herself, and she was so engrossed that she couldn't hear the noise around her. She could only hear Qinyun's barely audible breathing and the sound of his strong heartbeat.
Look over there.
Qinyun squeezed his way through the crowd, holding Qingxue. Qingxue looked in the direction of Qinyun's finger and was instantly stunned. In front of her was a glass tunnel, completely made of glass. The lights from the aquarium shone on the clear blue water, with schools of fish swimming and water plants swaying. It was a completely immersive world of the ocean. Qingxue was also so shocked that she opened her mouth. This was the first time she had seen such a heart-stopping scene.
Follow me, said Qinyun, seeing their captivated expressions. He led the two of them to the glass.
Qingxue subconsciously reached out her palm and placed it on the glass, and immediately several fish swam over. Standing here, it was as if they were in the ocean.
Click.
Qinyun took out his phone and captured the scene. In the following time, the two sisters took out their phones at the same time and carefully photographed every scene. This would be enough for them to remember for a long time.
Honey, let's take a picture together.
Looking at Qingxue's expectant expression, Qinyun immediately handed the phone to Qingning. The moment the picture was frozen, Qingning pressed the screen, but she found that Qingxue had turned her head to look at Qinyun again at the moment it was frozen.
Sister, don't move around, let's take another picture.
Qingxue took the phone. No need, this picture is quite good looking. Although the picture was a little different from what she had imagined, it unexpectedly looked quite good. Qinyun glanced at the photo and sure enough, taking a photo had a lot to do with one's appearance, and Qingshue's profile was really stunning.
Let's go, there are still many animals you haven't seen, said Qinyun. This aquarium also has dolphin shows. Dolphins?
The two sisters immediately thought of those cute animals on TV, and their eyes became starry. Following the map, the three of them went to watch the dolphin show again.
For something they had never seen before, the two sisters watched intently.
After the dolphin show was over, they were both full of admiration. How can there be such cute things? It was so amazing. When they passed by the gift shop, Xingling stopped in front of a large dolphin doll. A rare longing appeared on the girl's cold face, but when she saw the price, she immediately turned away without hesitation.
You guys sit here for a while, I'll go buy some drinks, Qinyun arranged for the two and walked outside. When he returned, he was carrying a giant dolphin doll in one arm and 3 drinks in the other.
The dolphin blocked the top half of Qinyun's body, and when he walked up to Qingli, the girl's eyes were full of envy. This must be something a parent bought for their child.
What a good father. Did my father ever give me anything? Oh, I remember.
He wanted to give me to his cousin so he could get the bride price early.
Ha ha. That's it. Chapter 26 Enjoy the service.
Lime, quickly take this for me, Qinyun's voice came from behind the doll.
Ha?
Taking the fluffy dolphin, Lime was momentarily stunned.
Spending money on this little girl again.
After looking at the price tag, Qingxue felt a pang of pain, but seeing her sister's appearance, she instantly felt that it was worth it.
How did you know I like this? Qinyun took a sip of his drink and laughed. What little girl could refuse a fluffy toy?
Other people's children have them, so of course we want them too.
We just bought one, and I'm glad you like it. Yes, I like it, thank you.
A rare smile appeared on Xingning's face. She hugged the dolphin tightly with both hands and buried her entire face in it, feeling completely safe. Qinyun then took out a bracelet with a string of shells and pearls from his pocket and waved it in front of Qingshue's eyes.
Husband, is this for me? Qingxue exclaimed, attracting a flurry of glances from those around them, and another burst of sighs when they saw her appearance. Do you like it?
Qingxue nodded vigorously, took the bracelet, and put it directly on her hand, shaking it back and forth, making a pleasant sound, and she couldn't stop loving it. After resting enough, the three continued to the next stop, playing until the afternoon before they reluctantly walked out of the aquarium. The two sisters gathered together and discussed the never-before-seen scenery. Accompanied by their silvery laughter, everyone around them looked at Qinyun with envy, and couldn't help but curse in their hearts. This son of a bitch really hasn't lived in vain, this life is considered worthwhile.
Honey, let's go home, we had so much fun today.
Over the years, Qinyun had never brought her to such a place, and now she was bursting with happiness. Why go home so early? There are other things we haven't experienced yet.
More?
Where to now? Qingshue's sense of anticipation was at full capacity.
Let's go to the movies. We already have tickets. Mooah.
Without caring about the stares of the people around them, Qingxue gave Qinyun a kiss on the cheek. Qingmei's face was also filled with a smile. She had never been so happy in all these years.
It turned out that life was not only about fear and bitterness, but could also be so wonderful. When they arrived at the cinema, it was just the right time. They bought 2 buckets of popcorn and some snacks, found the screening room, and the cool feeling spread throughout their bodies the moment they walked in. This was still Lime's first time at the cinema, and she kept looking around, asking Qingshuo in a small voice like a little child. Shen Yun just quietly watched her. This was the reaction of a normal child. He was usually too indifferent. The cinema was very dark, and most people were still at work at this time of day, so there weren't many people, just a few couples in the corner. The movie started, and Xingmei's attention was quickly drawn to the big screen. Shen Yun held a bucket of popcorn and took out a kernel and placed it near Qingshuo's mouth. Qingshuo glanced back and gave a charming smile, whispering, "Thank you, husband." Her lips parted slightly, and the popcorn was placed in her mouth along with Chen Yun's finger. Her tongue slid deftly over the finger, and Qingshuo even threw him a flirtatious glance. In an instant, Chen Yun was unable to remain calm, his gaze fixedly on the exquisite young woman beside him. Normally, shouldn't his resistance have grown with each passing day? Why did it feel as if his nervous system had completely given up and allowed Qingshuo to erode away at him? Qingshuo saw Chen Yun's expression and felt even more pleased with herself, as her goal had been achieved. She picked up the armrest nearby and leaned her whole body over. There were no further excessive actions. After all, there were security cameras in the cinema. Qingshuo began to feed him, putting food in Chen Yun's mouth from time to time. They were watching a comedy, but there was little laughter in the cinema. Perhaps only these 3 people were watching the movie seriously, while the rest of the couples were doing other things. This movie is really good, 5 stars. Qingling kept nodding, agreeing with her sister. As the 3 walked out of the mall, the hot air hit them, mixed with the sound of cars driving by on the road. It feels like you've suddenly gone from the Arctic to the rainforest, and you can't breathe. Sometimes it's cooler at night, but sometimes it's like being in a sauna, depending on the mood of the weather gods. Buying an air conditioner should be on the agenda, otherwise this summer is going to be tough. It's already so late, my husband must be hungry. I'll go home and cook for you. I'm so tired after a day of playing, I'm not going to cook. What do you guys want to eat? Qingshuo looked at Chen Yun gratefully. She was indeed tired today, but she had had a really good time and wished every day could be like this. Qingling, what do you want to eat? Seeing Chen Yun's gentle gaze, Qingling plucked up the courage to say, I want to eat barbecue. She had only seen such delicacies on her phone. Every time she heard her classmates in class discuss which restaurant had what kind of food, Qingling would listen carefully. There was no way around it, she had no resistance to such delicious food. Chen Yun didn't expect that Chang Ming could actually give an answer, and for a moment he forgot to answer. I was just saying, I'll eat whatever. Chang Ming regretted her rashness. After all, the price of a meal of barbecue didn't seem cheap, and she had been a little greedy. No, let's just eat barbecue, Chen Yun said encouragingly. This is what a family should be like. In the future, if you have any requests, just let your sister and I know, and we'll try our best to satisfy you. Chang Ming nodded vigorously, a rare smile appearing on her cold face. Qingshuo took her sister's hand and pinched her cheek affectionately. She couldn't be happier right now. Both her husband and sister had undergone significant changes, and everything was developing in a positive direction. They found a nearby barbecue restaurant with good online reviews, booked a table, and the 3 of them set off. The barbecue restaurant was located on a pedestrian street. The street was crowded and bustling, and very lively. The few of them pushed their way against the flow of people and soon arrived at the middle of the pedestrian street. Qingshuo looked around and exclaimed, "What happened to the style of decoration here? I remember it being very ordinary a few years ago, but now it looks really good. No wonder so many people come here." Chen Yun took Qingshuo's hand and unconsciously squeezed it tightly. This simple man actually didn't even have time to go shopping normally. Qingshuo sensed his change in emotions and smiled, "Honey, don't think so much, there's still a long time ahead. I see that barbecue restaurant, let's go." Entering the hall, the waiter showed the 3 of them to a table. He handed Qingli the menu and said, "See if there's anything you want to eat." Looking at the dazzling array of dishes and the exorbitant prices on the menu, her face tightened up and she became cautious again. Chen Yun explained the ingredients and approximate flavors of the dishes to her thoughtfully. Qingli's furrowed brows eased slightly, but it seemed that the young girl was still in a dilemma and it was hard for her to choose for the time being. Chen Yun did not rush her, and told the waiter to go ahead and get busy, and then to call him over after he had studied the menu. Qingshuo looked at his considerate appearance, and a warm current passed through her heart. It turned out that all the suffering she had endured seemed to have been worthwhile. Chapter 27 The wicked have their own evil to endure. Qing Shui unconsciously raised the corners of her mouth slightly. She could feel that Chen Yun cared for her more and more. Autumn water seemed to be flowing in her eyes, and her gaze was enough to describe the word gentle. She suddenly realized that smiling seemed to have become a very relaxing thing for her. After all, it was still because the happiness that had always been hanging in the sky, as unattainable as the sun chasing the sun, had suddenly become within reach. Finally, she decided on the dishes she wanted to order and called the waiter to start ordering. The best thing about hot pot and barbecue is that the food arrives quickly, and before long the table is full. Chen Yun takes the tongs and places the marinated slices of meat on the grill tray. Instantly, there is a sizzling sound and a puff of smoke, and the aroma of the barbecue fills the air. Qingli stares wide-eyed at the gradually shrinking piece of meat, which eventually becomes brown on both sides, looking magical. Chen Yun took a piece of perilla leaf, dipped a piece of meat with a mixture of fat and lean meat in the sauce, placed it on top, wrapped it up, and handed it to Qingli. "This is beef with fat, try it, is it delicious?" "Give it to your sister, I'm not hungry." Qingli's eyes never left the dark green package, but she politely declined. "Children have the right to enjoy food first, this one is for you, I'll just wrap one more for your sister." "Oh," Xing Ming said softly. "So children have this right? I didn't know that. Aren't all the girls in the village not allowed to eat at the table?" After taking the roast, she took a small bite, and her pupils instantly dilated. The fragrance of the roast mixed with the unique fresh taste of the perilla leaves, instantly opening up her taste buds. It was an amazing flavor. The lime also triggered her unique eating mode. She looked down at the food, serious and reverent, as if each bite was a brand new experience. Chen Yun looked at her expression, a little puzzled, and looked at the kebab on the table. "Is this thing really that delicious? Could it be that this kebab has a unique marinating method?" Following the kebab given to lime, he wrapped it again and placed it in his mouth. It's about the same as other shops, one taste. He became more and more certain that the girl had the talent to eat dry. "Honey, I've ordered everything for Dad, so you can just pick it up when you go there tomorrow," Qing Shui said softly, wiping the oil from the corner of Chen Yun's mouth. "Okay, just make sure you buy what I want." These words once again stirred up a mixture of emotions in his heart. He didn't know what to feel, and he was both looking forward to and afraid of the reunion. Although he had been reborn for only a few days, more than 10 years had passed, and his father's appearance had remained the same as when he had gone to university. He wondered if they would have a fight when they met. Qing Shui understood his anxiety and reassured him, "Don't worry, Dad has always hoped that you will forgive him. No matter what happens, we are family, aren't we?" Hearing these words from Qing Shui, Chen Yun's worries slowly subsided. After checking out, Chen Yun received a call from Luo Zhu. "Are you home? I'll come find you now." "It was settled so quickly? I was just about to go home, come over." Qing Shui was incredulous when she heard the two talking. She had seen how arrogant the family was yesterday. The clothes the obese middle-aged man was wearing might be enough to pay her salary for a year, so how could it be settled so quickly? It was probably just a middleman being found to reconcile the two sides. That would be good enough, as long as they stopped bothering her sister. Qingli kept her head down as she thought about what had happened yesterday, and the good mood she had felt after finishing the barbecue was gone. When the three arrived home, Luo Zhu was already waiting at the door with Xuanshuang. "Hello, Godfather, I want a hug." When Xuanshuang saw Chen Yun, she didn't seem shy and reached out her arms to greet him. "My dear, you've been waiting for a long time, where's your father?" Xuanshuang said in a baby voice, "Daddy took a plane." Luo Zhu explained with a smile, "Something came up at work, so Li Wei went to take care of it." Qingling looked at the woman in front of her. She didn't look a day over 30. Although she didn't look like her sister, she had a sweet face and a pleasant voice. "Hello, Sister Luo Zhu," Qingling politely said. Luo Zhu's eyes lit up when she saw Qingling. She took her hand and smiled, "You must be Qingling. You're just as pretty as your sister." After the few entered the house, Qing Shui said apologetically, "The house is a bit small. Make yourself at home. I'll go make some tea." Luo Zhu also didn't feel out of place and found a place to sit down. "Sister-in-law, don't bother. Wife, take Frosty to the bedroom to play for a while, I need to talk to Luo Zhu about something." Qing Shui picked up Frosty and gently pinched the young, tender little face. "Frosty, your godmother will take you to see something fun." Seeing Qingli, who turned to leave, Luo Zhu laughed. "Qingli, you stay and sit next to your sister." Then she opened the video on her phone and threw it to Chen Yun. Take a look, I think you'll be interested in what's inside. She pressed play, and immediately screams and pleas for mercy could be heard. The screen was bloody, and Chen Yun watched expressionlessly as what happened to Huang Mao and the others. Huang Mao's 3 legs were all broken, and the remaining ones had 2 broken legs. By the way, I collected some of their previous evidence, enough to put them away for good. Also, Lina's family business's capital chain has been broken, and he is now heavily in debt. Luo Zhu said these words casually, as if they were just small talk, and his smile never changed. The video continued to play, and Qing Lin listened to the inhuman sounds inside and became pale with fear, her body trembling uncontrollably. Luo Zhu took Qing Lin's hand. Are you scared? Do you feel pity for those people? Qing Lin didn't know how to answer this question. You can imagine, if it wasn't for your brother-in-law's appearance yesterday, what would you be doing now? Don't use your kindness to pity those scumbags. In the future, you will encounter similar people, and you must learn to protect yourself, understand? This was the purpose of Luo Zhu leaving Qing Ning behind. There are too many evil people in the world. With her looks, this kind of thing may happen again in the future, and not every time Chen Yun can be by her side. Hearing this, Qing Ning lowered her head and fell into deep thought. Chapter 28 The dust settles. Chen Yun put his phone on the table and did not disturb the young girl who was deep in thought. Some growth is something she must experience on her own, and no one else can help. After a while, Qing Ning looked up, her eyes gradually losing their fear. She said gratefully, Sister Luo Zhu, I understand. I've troubled you this time. You're such a sweet girl, I like you. Turning to Chen Yun, she said, Brother Chen, let this girl stay by my side for a while, I can teach her some things she should learn, what do you think? Before Chen Yun could say anything, Qing Ning whispered her refusal, No, I don't want to trouble Sister Luo Zhu, I still want to live with you. Oh, that's a pity. Alright then, call me if you need anything in the future, got it? Chen Yun sighed, perhaps this was the charm of good looks. This was the first time the two had met, but it was clear that Luo Zhu was quite taken with Qing Ning, and quite wanted to take her home right now and start the strange series of girl development. Luo Zhu looked at Chen Yun with playful eyes and said, What are your plans for the future? I think this is the way to go for the time being, I don't have any other ideas yet. Since you've now returned to your old self, there are some things that Li Wei and Gu Hongfei don't dare say, so I'll have to say them. Luo Zhu's smile gradually faded, and his expression became serious. Are you going to stay here forever? With your abilities, it shouldn't be difficult to let your sister-in-law and Qinglin live a good life, right? Chen Yun didn't refute anything. I understand what you mean. I have a few things on my hands, so let's talk about the rest after I'm done. Luo Zhu nodded thoughtfully. Because of Tang Yun? If you're talking about this woman, I'm happy to help you solve it. I've never liked her. Chen Yun shook his head. I'll do it myself. I've already started preparing. I've owed Qingxue so much over the years, and it would be hard to justify not doing it myself. Okay, if you hadn't stopped me back then, I would have thrown her into the sea to feed the fish. Chen Yun shook his head and laughed bitterly. Luo Zhu's personality really hasn't changed at all. The two of them chatted for a while, and Luo Zhu took Shuang home. Qingxue had been listening to their conversation in the bedroom. When she learned the outcome of those people, the resentment and worry in her heart instantly dissipated, and her heart, which had been hanging in the balance, also let go. Honey, I didn't realize that Luo Zhu was so amazing, and she solved them in one day. That's great, no need to be afraid anymore. Then he looked at his sister and said, Your face is almost healed, so you can go to school tomorrow. Xingling nodded. After all, she was already in her 3rd year of high school, and her studies should come first. Moreover, Luo Zhu's words had a great impact on her, and the coldness in her eyes towards Chen Yun was gone. Brother-in-law, I owe you a lot for this, otherwise. Chen Yun waved his hands. We're all family, so don't be so polite. The word family was still very unfamiliar to Qingling. She had originally thought that only her sister was family, but now it seemed that she had gained another family member. The next morning, the willow tree outside the window swayed back and forth in the breeze, casting dappled light on the curtains. When Chen Yun woke up, breakfast was ready. The two of them accompanied Qing and I to school and watched her walk through the school gates before turning towards the supermarket. They got the various gift boxes they had ordered and hailed a taxi. Driver, go to Mingjiang Four Seasons City. After getting in the car, Chen Yun kept looking out the window, his face expressionless, but his clenched hands already showed his current mood. Qingxue wrapped her arms around his, gently opened her palms, and interlocked her fingers. Honey, don't be so nervous. When I told Dad you were coming, he was so excited he couldn't say a word for a long time. He really wants to see you, too. I know, it just feels. There was a brief silence in the car. Xingxue stopped talking and just quietly stroked the big hand, soothing the wounds in his heart. The trees on both sides were rapidly receding, and the scattered sunlight fell on the car window, constantly changing its shape and shining on Chen Yun's face. At this moment, he was still tilting his head slightly, his eyes unfocused, and only various colors of light hung in front of his eyes, floating around like flying insects. Xingxue called out in distress, "Honey," and then there was no sound, not knowing what to say. She had never seen Chen Yun like this before. It was as if a young man, carrying a heavy burden, was all alone, his eyes vacant but determined, walking on. When Chen Yun stood in front of a door with the gift box in his hands, his mood calmed down a bit. Since he had already come, he had to face what needed to be faced. With a sigh, he rang the doorbell. Soon, the door opened, as if the person inside had been waiting there all along. An old man appeared in Chen Yun's line of sight. As a young man, he had thought countless times about what his father would look like in his old age, but he never imagined that this day would come so soon. His hair was gray, his once rosy face had a few age spots, his back was stooped, he was holding a walking stick, and there was even a hint of turbidity in his eyes. At this moment, his eyes were red and bloodshot, and he looked at Chen Yun absent-mindedly. One hand was raised, unable to resist the urge to stroke his son's face, but he was afraid and it remained suspended in the air. The father and son stood face to face like this, and Xingxue broke the ice. "Dad, Chen Yun and I have come to see you." Chen Hanlin only reacted then, and kept saying, "Good, good, it's good that you're here." His lips trembled, and he couldn't say anything else. The two of them entered the house, and piled the gift boxes at the door. Chen Yun wanted to speak several times, but he was like something stuck in his throat, unable to make any sound. How did he become like this? Wasn't he still young? Why did he need a walking stick? Why had his hair turned white? The man who had run around the park with me on his shoulders, had he grown old? At that moment, the world was silent. "Son, what do you want to be when you grow up?" "Son, eat, I'm not hungry." "Son, when you find a wife, you must find a woman like your mother, someone down to earth." "Son, you must respect your mother in the future." "Son." Yes, he really is old. Old enough to be trembling. Old enough that I hardly recognize him anymore. Chapter 29. The little old man pretended to be husband. Xingxue shook his arm and whispered, "What's wrong with you?" When Chen Yun came to his senses, the old man was already sitting across from him, his stooped body leaning slightly forward, all his weight supported by the cane. "Dad, I was wrong," he said, his eyes red from seeing Chen Hanlin like this, and he lowered his head. "It's all in the past." "It's all in the past." The little old man wiped away the tears in the corners of his eyes. Xingxue was also in tears when she saw this scene. The father and son had finally reconciled, which was what she had wanted to see most. After a long time, Xingxue hurriedly took the health products in the gift box. "Dad, these are all bought for you by Chen Yun. You must take them regularly. This one a day." The atmosphere in the living room became a lot more relaxed. A slight smile appeared on the old man's face, and from time to time, Chen Yun chimed in with a few words. "Dad, I'm going downstairs to buy some ingredients to cook some dishes for lunch, so that Chen Yun can drink with you." Seeing that the father and son could already communicate normally, Xingxue left understandingly, leaving them more time alone. "Dad, you haven't found me a stepmother over the years, have you?" After talking about these things, the father and son returned to their original way of getting along with each other, full of humor. "How dare you talk to your father like that? I promised your mother that I would marry her and only her in this life," Chen Hanlin said in a grumpy tone. The images of Chen Yun growing up came back to him, and the father and son had a very good relationship, like that of best friends. Now it seemed like they could be like they used to be again, and the old man held back his emotions as he fought back tears. "Hey, little old man, you've kept yourself pure, haven't you? Are you afraid that some old lady will eye your meager pension? I reckon you'll be getting a grandchild soon, so how big a red envelope are you going to prepare?" Hearing the word grandchildren, Chen Hanlin immediately became excited. "Son, are you going to have a baby? Xingxue is pregnant? Why are you so excited?" "She's not pregnant, but I feel it's coming soon," Chen Yun laughed, "and with the current relationship and frequency between the two, it won't be long before they succeed." "Ha, I'm also someone who will soon be holding a grandchild. When the baby is born, we must hold a full moon banquet, and I'll invite all those old men downstairs, so they don't show off in front of me all day." Okay, then you can watch your grandson every day. Oh, wait a minute.
The little old man said excitedly, stood up, and quickly walked towards the bedroom without his cane.
Chen Yun was stunned. Holding a grandchild cures all ills.
It's true that my back doesn't ache anymore, my legs don't hurt, and I can run without my cane. In a moment, the old man took a bank card and put it in front of Chen Yun. This is a red envelope for my grandson.
You take it.
Chen Yun picked it up, played with it a few times, and asked, keep this little insurance for yourself, I don't think it's even enough for your grandson's formula.
Huh? Is formula so expensive now?
I thought 50 million yuan would be enough, oops, I should have saved more. The little old man stamped his feet with some remorse. Hey, kids cost a lot of money these days, and with just 50 million yuan.
Huh? What do you mean, Dad? Did you rob a bank? Chen Yun was stunned.
With a pop sound, the bank card fell to the ground, and he stared at Chen Hanlin in disbelief. It's not much, just 50 million, I don't know if it's enough for my grandson to buy diapers.
Hey, why is life getting harder and harder?
Chen Hanlin put his hands behind his back, sighed to the sky, looked at the scenery in the distance, and his mouth unconsciously rose up.
Cool.
Finally, he got himself installed. The little old man was very satisfied with his son's expression. He had worked so hard for so many years just for this. Chen Hanlin supported his chin with his hand, and sighed inwardly. This little old man has gone astray, he's become arrogant.
Look at his expression now, his tail is even sticking up in the air. No, Dad, be honest with me, have you been taken care of by a rich woman? Just ask, do you need anyone over there? I don't want to work hard anymore. Do you think I'm like you, not working hard? I've saved up all this money little by little. Chen Hanlin looked at his son with disdain.
So all these years you've been hiding this money and spending it all yourself, without thinking about giving your son some? You only took it out when you heard about the grandchild, that's so biased, isn't it? Chen Yun said discontentedly. You're full of shit, the old man said excitedly.
I've wanted to scold you for a long time. What you've done over the years is called human resources. Look at what you've done to Qingxue, just beat her when you get home.
It's just that Qingxue can
put up with you for so long, someone else would have run away long ago.
The little old man was so angry that his beard stood up, and he was panting heavily. Dad, I was wrong, Chen Yun said without arguing, but seriously. Hearing this, the little old man suddenly deflated like a deflated balloon, and his voice dropped considerably. Hey, forget it, if it weren't for that woman, it wouldn't. Then he looked at Chen Yun and asked with a gloomy expression, since you've turned back into a human, let me ask you, what are you going to do about Tang Yun? She took most of the credit for what happened back then.
If you can't bear to do it, you can leave it to me. Chapter 30 Big Brother Bang. Hearing this name, Chen Yun no longer had any strong emotions.
He took out 2 cigarettes and lit them, putting one in the little old man's mouth. I'll do it myself.
I'm already getting things ready. No matter what, I have to give Qingxue an explanation. Chen Hanlin nodded in satisfaction. That's my son, daring to do and to bear responsibility.
A mistake is a mistake, as long as you know how to repent. At this point, Qingxue returned with the groceries and saw the father and son puffing away and shooting the breeze.
She let out a sigh of relief. Their relationship was really not ordinary.
Every time she saw her father-in-law's phone come on, Chen Yun's first words were, "Big brother, what's up?" After the meal, the father and son completely returned to their original way of getting along with each other.
Qingxue was envious of the way they revealed each other's flaws.
It turned out that the way to get along with your elders could be like this. He originally wanted to drink some wine, but Chen Hanlin stopped him, saying that he had something to do later and couldn't drink. The little old man was being mysterious, so Chen Yun didn't ask anymore. Qingxue's cooking is really good, and this meal was very comfortable, said Chen Hanlin. It had been more than 10 years, and Chen Hanlin had never been so happy, and he felt refreshed. Dad, as long as you like it, I'll come over every day to cook for you, Qingxue responded with a smile. You don't need to go to all that trouble.
It's exhausting running around every day.
Qingxue was taken aback and didn't understand the meaning of Chen Hanlin's words. Son, here the little old man probably took out a set of car keys from a drawer. I've sent the location of the house to your phone.
The door lock code is your birthday. Go take a look. Huh? What do you mean?
He looked at the Mercedes-Benz car keys in his hands and was momentarily stunned. The house is near Qingling High School.
I bought it a long time ago. I'll find someone to design the interior. You should like it.
The little old man looked out the window, his tone indifferent. With his hands behind his back, he looked like a sage, a master of the world.
Chen Yun almost applauded.
This was too smooth, it had to be 100 points.
Sure enough, Xingxue was taken aback and said hurriedly, "Dad, I can't take your house. We have money and a place to live now." Chen Yun directly put the car keys in his pocket and said, "Dad, can you please speak nicely?" "Okay," the little old man resumed his smirking appearance. "Son of a bitch, what do you think? Was I pretending to be interesting?" Chen Yun gave him a thumbs up. "Impressive, but when did you buy the house?" "It's been a while. I thought it would be more convenient for you to live there."
Chen Hanlin didn't say much, but over the years he had saved up a lot of money for Chen Yun. After his wife passed away, Chen Yun fell out with him and became completely carefree, spending his time either keeping an eye on his son's activities or making money in business. The previous 2 years, the old man's health had been deteriorating day by day, mainly due to his heart disease. Thinking that in order to reconcile with Chen Yun and live a few more years, he had to dispose of all the companies in his hands, leaving only some real estate and shops. He had not thought of helping Chen Yun more, but after Xingxue was beaten after giving him money, he did not dare to help too much anymore. He had wanted to find Xingxue a stable job so that she would not have to work so hard, but she had refused. Xingxue took hold of Chen Yun's clothes, indicating that he should not take the old man's house. The old man had worked hard all his life and it was not easy to save some money. Chen Yun put his arm around her waist, took out his bank card and waved it in front of her eyes. "Do you know how much money there is here?" "More than 50 million. I got it from my big brother Banyi, so now we don't lack money." Xingxue was dumbfounded and asked dumbly, "Where did you get such a big brother?" The little old man immediately raised his hand and smiled a little embarrassed. "I am not talented, I am Chen Yun's big brother." Xingxue was completely confused. No, looking at the appearance of the father and son, it didn't seem like a joke. Only then did she react, "Her father-in-law has so much money?" Xingxue hurriedly took the bank card. "Dad, we can't take your money. If you give us all your money, how will you live?" "It's okay, I still have some, but not much." Xingxue had the expression of "I knew it." Sure enough, parents always think of their children's best interests, and this money was even more unacceptably. The little old man scratched his head. "There's only one more 8-digit bank card and a few villas, a dozen cars, more than 20. "Very good, he's done it again." Chen Yun didn't care about the little old man's serious expression, and continued to pretend to break the cup with his fingers. He pulled Xingxue directly out the door. "Old man, we're leaving, we'll come back some other day." "Hey, I'm not done yet. By the way, the car is downstairs, look for it, it's one of my cars." Well, the pretending is never ending. As he watched the two men go downstairs, Chen Hanlin's smile gradually faded, and his eyes turned red. It was worth it to be able to sit at the same table and eat with his son in this life. When they got downstairs, they easily found the Mercedes-Benz. After getting in the car, Xingxue was still a little dazed. "Honey, I don't think it's a good idea for us to take so much money from Dad. We should give it back." "Ha ha. Giving it back might kill the old man," said Chen Yun, satisfied with the ignition. He nodded, and indeed, a luxury car is different. "Why? You don't understand my father's mind. What has he been working so hard for all these years? If we don't take this stuff, the old man will probably think too much about it. Only by accepting his kindness with a clear conscience can the old man feel better." Xingxue nodded as if she understood, but she didn't quite understand the way the father and son handled things. After all, the idea instilled in her since childhood was that a girl is a money-spending commodity. Marrying a chicken means marrying a chicken, marrying a dog means marrying a dog. No matter what kind of husband you have, getting divorced is a disgrace to your parents, and you will be beaten to death if you go back to your parents' home. Don't think about it so much, let's go look at the house first. Get ready to move, the place you're living in now really isn't good enough for you. Xingxue took Chen Yun's hand and said softly, "It's not a hardship." "Where there's a husband, there's no hardship." Chen Yun's nose ran at the sound of these words. How could there be such a silly girl? The days ahead will get better and better. Don't go to work. Just stay at home and be a rich woman. I'll support you. No, Xingxue objected in a rare whisper. In the future, when we have children, there will be a lot of places to spend money. How can I not go out and earn money? You've even learned to argue back. Chen Yun put on a long face and pretended to be angry, saying, "From now on, you'll listen to me and quit your job tomorrow." After saying that, he reached over and took her hand.
Xingxue let out a little squeak and immediately complied. Oh, okay, don't be angry, husband, I'll do whatever you say. You're still driving, so don't move your hand around, be careful. An automatic transmission car, one hand won't affect my driving, Chen Yun said. Nonsense. Ah? Is that so? This is the first time I've been in such a nice car, so in that case. Xingxue took off her high heels. Here, this will be more convenient. This made Chen Yun flinch. This simpleton is really too obedient, she believes whatever I say. But who can stop such a beautiful sight from dangling in front of you? After parking, Chen Yun took out a cigarette and lit it. Xingxue asked doubtfully, honey, why aren't you happy? I'm just too happy, so. I can't get out of the car right now. Xingxue was momentarily stunned, and then she understood what Chen Yun was struggling with. She flushed and gave a little disgusted sound. Looking out of the car, she saw that it was rush hour and there were basically no pedestrians on the road. Moreover, the car's windows had reflective film, so no one could see in. Sigh. Wasn't this understanding wife really sent from heaven?